Never thought I'd say the day, but just keeps raining. Won't stop. Great thing. Councillors, we've got, I think, a long day, and there's an agenda mixed in with it, I might add. We've got some really, really interesting things here on our agenda. We've got a couple of, I suppose you'd say, those extraordinary things. We've got a recognition of certainly some of council staff, and particularly a piece of infrastructure that we'd like to acknowledge today. Before we start our meeting, we'll obviously do a few, I suppose, rudimentary things, but clearly and importantly, we have Rod McClellan here, who's going to actually lead us in prayer when we get to him. And obviously still masticating over lunch yesterday that I think was pretty good, Rod. So, yeah, very much enjoyed. Welcome to all our live streamers. I guess, as I said, I think our meeting should run till about lunchtime today. I don't believe we've got closed sessions, Marnie. We have one, sorry. So there will obviously just be a little bit of interruption to the coverage of our meeting today, and the doors will be closed for that short period of time. So, look, Council, I think we are all present. We don't have any apologies. Is there any leave of absences, apart from the fact that you'll be having Christmas at home, but not foreseeable? Thank you, councillors. And as we always do, we acknowledge in this place the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge all traditional owner groups right across the Central Highlands before our meeting. That, Rod, brings us to you, the onerous task of leading us in prayer and a little bit of guidance and mentoring at our last meeting of the year, and certainly into that, probably that most holy time of the year. So, Rod, I'll let you lead us off.
Thank you, my pleasure. Should I press something on this? Or?
Yeah, right-hand side button just push down and the red light should be on. And
never done that.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to, thank you for lunch yesterday, and thank you all for all you do. I'm not doing a particularly Christmassy reading this morning, but I don't know if this is out of order or not, but I brought, our church is trying something we haven't done before. We're holding a carol service this Saturday, and I know there's plenty of carols going around. What we're trying to do a little bit differently is to encourage a sing-along, particularly. So anyway, I'm just going to leave those there if that's not inappropriate, and you're welcome to pick one up. But I was going to read just a short passage from the book of the Gospel of Luke. If you grew up in church or went to Sunday school as a kid, you might even recognise the story. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through, and a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Does anyone recognise this story or a bit of it? I find two really fascinating things in that last verse. He ran ahead and climbed a fig tree. This is childlike behaviour, isn't it? Kerry, you know I don't mind running, but I don't like being seen to run because I'm anxious or urgent. When I lived in Brisbane, if I was running late for a bus, I would rather miss the bus than be seen to run for the bus. That's a self-conscious thing. Maybe I've got to get over it. But, adults don't like to be seen to be running, to be anxious, I don't think. And climbing a tree is a really childlike sort of thing to do. Not too many adults will climb a tree to get a view, least of all just for a man that's walking along. But that's what Zacchaeus does. He runs ahead, he climbs a tree, and then when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Culturally, I think maybe we think that to invite yourself over to someone's house might be a bit rude, a bit of an imposition. In these days, it was very much an honour to invite yourself to someone's house. But then it says this starts the lips talking, the crowd talking. All the people saw this and they began to mutter. They said, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." Because Zacchaeus, you might have picked up at the start, he was a tax collector, and I imagine as councillors, twice a year when you send your rates notices out, they're your least popular times of year. Everyone thinks you're lining your pockets, and we all know that's not really the case, but actually in this scenario, it often was the case. The tax collectors were Jewish people who were fleecing fellow Jews for the sake they were working for their Roman overlords, and so it was an act of traitoring against your own people to be a tax collector, and obviously getting rich off the proceeds as well. And so the people didn't like it, but Zacchaeus stood up and he said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." And Jesus said, "Today salvation has come to this house. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." I think just one other thing to draw attention to in that, Zacchaeus in this, he was a proud man, he had a proud station, he was a very wealthy man, but he humbled himself to run ahead and to climb this tree. And what I find fascinating as well is the cross that Jesus was ultimately crucified on, made of timber, was often referred to as a tree. And so there's this man who has humbled himself to catch a glimpse of Jesus by climbing a tree, but then Jesus' greatest act was to humble himself and climb a tree and to give his life as a sacrifice for the sins of people like Zacchaeus and us as well. A really a beautiful picture of love and humility. So I don't know what that might mean for you today, but I think it really speaks to the greatness of Jesus in a way we don't often think about. So if you don't mind, I'll lead in a short prayer, and I know you've got lots to do. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you that you are a God who looks down on us, and you look down with love, and you lift us up, and you have sent your Son who humbled himself, who became a man, and who even climbed the tree of the cross to die for us. We thank you for his great love, for his humility, for his model of what a real and great life is, but also for his sacrifice that brings us close to you again. We thank you especially at this special time of year as we remember the first appearing of our Lord in that manger as a little child. We pray that this will be a time that brings people together to love and to reconcile and to enjoy your many blessings. And Father, we pray for these men and women who are gathered today to make decisions for the good of the people you've put them in charge of. We pray that you help them to act with wisdom and with grace and integrity. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yep, thank you, Rod. Absolutely. And as I said yesterday, thank you again, certainly on your own behalf, but certainly on behalf of the churches together that provide so much, not just for us, but for the community at large, and certainly are going to be in their busiest time perhaps of the year as well. So appreciate it. Merry Christmas, yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yep. Thanks, Rod. All right. Thank you. Councillors, with your indulgence, I just want to address some members of the gallery, if that's all right, please. I think there was a group of people here that came last meeting that came with the expectation there might have been some agenda item relating to vaccinations, mandates, and a number of other issues. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily on our agenda. And I know that I spoke to some people this morning that said there might be some representatives attending the gallery this morning and might be even observing via streaming. And I just wanted to say there is no agenda item for any of those things here today. And I suspect that some correspondence I've had is that there may be some people that do want to engage with council and have provided some forums where they can attend. And I think I've written to a number of people and responded to say that if there are events and councillors are invited to them, well, that's their opportunity and option to go and attend. But certainly from our perspective as a council, if you were to write in and actually seek a meeting with councils, that is through to the CEO. And I say that not to be patronising, but just to say to you, well, that's the process by which we would engage more appropriately with you. The gallery is for you, and it's an open door. This is the meeting for the people of the Central Highlands, but it's not for participation from the gallery. So I didn't want to disappoint people, and I'm not going to assume that everyone's here to want to say something, but they need to make a point and then obviously that opportunity is there. So there is an agenda item here. I think I did respond to some people this week that said, just to probably explain our participation in the CQ Rock letter to the Premier. There's a reason for that. Individual councils don't have certainly the gravitas to command immediate respect from the Premier. We do that collectively, and that was our decision to make sure that we were part of the CQ Rock response to the state government. Our response is based on not necessarily the number of issues around the proposals and the directives they had, but more about the impacts on our businesses. We have obviously made that quite clear. The state government did make some changes to that, but it's not our remit, and it won't be our place to talk about mandates, because by definition that's not something that we're involved in. Our support is neither here nor there, because it is not something that can be enforced. And certainly in terms of rights and freedoms, that's certainly not a place for us to be in that conversation, just as it is with politics and religion and anything else that's sacred to individuals. So that won't be a place we'll be going. But what we will do is keep providing the support that we always provide. I know that the Central Highlands Development Corporation attended certainly a meeting that was held last week, and I spoke to their representatives about businesses actually asking for some support from them. And to date they've had none. No one has reached out to them. They have actually contacted some people that had some concerns, and we're aware of, certainly in hospitality and small business. You will have seen some, I suppose, broader community responses to mandates, and they've been tested in courts, and we actually deal, like any other business, with directives, certainly from Queensland Health, but certainly as well from workplace health and safety aspects. So in that respect, I'm not looking for a collective collegiate here. We will be the same and are treated the same as every other business in that respect, and our employees will be treated and respected just the same as everyone else. So that's what we're doing. I guess if people are disappointed with whether we show that level of support, what I'm saying to you today is that we are always here to support our people, and that's what we will do in the best way we can possible, but we cannot and won't participate in, I guess you'd say, some overt support for a position one way or another. Our job is to get on with dealing with all of the people in the Central Highlands, and we'll have to do that. That's our remit in this place. So I don't want to disappoint anyone, and if that is disappointing to you, then I'm sorry, but that will be our position. But certainly, if there is an opportunity where you do want councillors to come to some forum, certainly make the invitation to the CEO, and obviously where we can, and with deliberation, we can respond to that. So I just didn't want to have people sitting around here all day expecting that council will be talking about some other agenda items. There's only the CQ Rock letter today. So that's for all our streamers and those people that took the time to attend this morning. Thank you, everyone. Councillors, we move on. The confirmation of the previous minutes of the meeting, which was the general meeting of the council that was held on the 24th of November. Would someone present like to move those, please? Moved by Councillor Brimley, second by Councillor Carpenter. Can you please just run your eyes across those as we normally do? Just check that that's an appropriate record. Happy with those? It'll be moved in second. Councillors, those in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors, that's carried. I did promise, Michelle, that we have a team of people outside, do we?
Yes.
We do, okay. Councillors, we're indulging ourselves again here this morning, but you would have been advised earlier on this year that, certainly last month, that our Emerald Airport achieved a significant national award, and Michelle's team are here this morning. So we might just, Councillor Cypher's going to hoozle them in. Come in, Solomon. I don't think you get to hang around in your corner. You're going to have to bring your team towards the side here. I know you like to gravitate there. Come in, team. Rochelle, come in. Right. Councillors, visitors, this is our airport management team, and I know that's probably under an underwhelming description of that team. Most people know that certainly, I guess if there's ever such a thing as a normal year, there's about 30,000 people that probably use the airport, and I probably and padding out a little bit the actual PAX numbers that normally happen, but there are obviously other general aviation movements there that sometimes we don't capture. But look, I know that you do a terrific job. That's changed. The impacts of certainly COVID management have made that a little different, but that doesn't change the responsibility there. It is clearly, as a piece of infrastructure, one of Council's most important and well-used pieces of infrastructure. It's probably our most forward-facing. It's the first thing that a lot of people that come to our region see, and to see it run as well. And I take and quote the words of Assistant Minister Nikki Boyd, who came out to participate in the opening of the most recent extension to the airport, of just how magical the airport was her words, I think. And she had never been and visited Emerald before in any way, shape or form, so her visit was to fly into the Emerald Airport. Clearly in the prospect of opening up that new extension, but certainly to just really see what it was like, and she was just completely overwhelmed with how professional it was, how fit for purpose it was, and how welcoming actually all our staff are. Now, having said that, Madam General Manager, did you want to talk about the award perhaps a little better than I? Because it'd be very disingenuous for me to say I think all councillors have reported on the number of improvements that have happened here over the last 2 years, and they have been significant. They're some of the biggest capital items that this council has, I guess, invested. And I guess two things happened is that they were delivered on time and generally under budget, which is extraordinary. I shouldn't say that, but extraordinary in a year and in a complex sort of arrangements that sometimes can easily lead to overruns. So it was incredible, but this has been happening now for a number of significant developments. So awards like this, we don't do it for that, but I think it's very appropriate and very timely that you're recognised. So Michelle, if you want to just
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, Mayor and councillors. Yes, it's with great pride that I sit here and have the opportunity to say a few words about the airport and the airport team. It certainly has been a journey over a number of years. It will be an ongoing journey. It's not a journey that stops, and I had the pleasure to fly in and test it again this morning, and everything was working as we would expect it to be. And a lot goes on behind the scenes to ensure that our passengers are safe when they leave or they arrive back at the airport. But to be acknowledged as a regional large airport from the Australian Airports Association is an outstanding achievement, and it's one that's well deserved by the team at the airport. We know that in winning that award, we've received acknowledgement for significant projects, as you've said, Mr Mayor, in regards to the runway overlay, an outstanding project in itself, in the fact that that runway was ready at 6 o'clock every morning for airport operations to continue, and it's just absolutely phenomenal how that project was handled, as well as the terminal project. Again, we needed to expand terminal, make some changes out there to bring in full body scanning, which is a requirement of Home Affairs of the federal government, things that are beyond our control, but we step in and we get done the things that we need to do. And it's also important to acknowledge the contribution from the state and federal governments also towards those improvements. And again, the team managed to run the airport, continue operations with the minimal effect upon our passengers, very few complaints, and I think that's just outstanding and a testament in regards to how you conduct yourselves at the airport and how you run the airport. It certainly is a credit to everyone involved in that facility, and I'm, as the General Manager, very, very proud in regards to the achievement. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yep. Can I just also note, and I know had we given Solomon the opportunity to do so, he would have, this is a representative group of that larger airport team that, as you know, and I know that you all work very collegiately, contribute to just that general great experience out there. So on behalf of them all, I just wanted to, I guess it's like present as the Solomon and his team. Yeah. And I might just read this out, everyone. It says, the 2021 National Airport Industry Awards, Large Regional Airport of the Year, Emerald Airport, Central Highlands Regional Council, Emerald Airport Master Plan Stage 1 implementation, upgrade of existing assets.
I haven't touched it yet.
and then on top of that, the projects and all that that brings on a day-to-day basis. The other group of people that we have to thank is Council, because Council entrusted us recurringly and consistently with massive amounts of money, very ambitious projects. Our timelines have always been very, very short, a lot shorter than even the bigger airports have been. And we've always had additional issues to deal with. Council have never shown any wavering of that support, and that's why we could deliver it. So without the yeses in the beginnings of the budgets and the yes, you can do it, we wouldn't have been able to do this. So thanks for allowing us to do this, I guess. Thanks.
We're just going to get another photo.
So, Councillor, I think Michelle said to you those items that, or those, some of the factors obviously in projects within the consideration for this was that obviously Australia's first bespoke design stone mastic asphalt, so that's that porous asphalt that we were the first to ever, I guess you'd say, do with Boral. The general aviation pavement reconstruction and expansion project right around the I guess you'd say, wrapping right around the building and down to the freight apron on the southern side. Obviously the security screening equipment requirements, which obviously necessitated the expansion of the terminal, and that terminal redevelopment project more broadly, which, as you know, when you start pulling the carpet over a little bit, a couple of metres, you find all the things that have been underneath it and probably not constructed so well. And obviously that's now been remedied, and we now have a facility that's in really, really great shape. So congratulations to that team. Councillors, we adopted those general minutes. Is there any business arising out of those that haven't been captured, I guess, in some of those meeting actions that are in the back of your agendas? And there is those, it will just roll into those meeting actions at the back. Is there anything in there that councillors want to make a comment on, an upgrade or an update to that from other staff and officers? All good. And any agenda items, I know councillors, we give this the opportunity every meeting, but if there's something there, I guess, that will obviously from now on, we'll shoot straight into January meetings. If there's something that needs to be on there, please let us know.
Yes,
Yeah, go.
Chair.
Councillor
May I please ask a question to General Manager McDougall? What line 9, line 9, net zero action plan, what's the delay there? Like, this has been in draft for a long time, and I thought we would have seen it by now. And I guess I'm feeling frustrated because I know it's grant funding, so we've got to receive it to acquit the grant funding. Plus, it's such an important report for our organisation as well. I see there's a date for the 24th of January. I guess, what's the delay, and are we 100% going to see it in January?
Thanks for the question. Through the Chair, to be open and transparent, this report was ready to go this report round, as we'd previously committed in the rolling reports. I decided to pull that. There was some consultation that was lacking regarding our executive leadership team just before I did bring that back to council. So we've got a session planned early in January with the executive leadership team just to nut through the cost implications and or not cost implications, because that most of it, as you're aware, councillor, is a capital-free investment. It's a bit of a different process to us moving forward, so I can commit to that date. I suppose for me, that date's sort of critical in us getting it to council at that meeting, because we'll need to obviously forecast for next year's program what that just may look like. So that is the aim, is to get it there, and if that does change, I'll certainly be back in front of council to inform why that would be. But at this stage, it is on track for that council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Daniels, for that question. Councillors, the next check we do is certainly with conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest that councillors want to declare? And there's nothing been received, sorry. Councillor Daniels, yep.
Sorry, I would like to make a voluntary declaration of a conflict of interest relating to item 12.3.5 telecommunications, please. As everyone knows, because I've done this model to make I own a very small parcel of Telstra shares,
Yeah.
which means that I potentially have something, a conflict of interest that councillors may want to consider. So I would like to ask my fellow councillors to consider whether I should look at able to continue and participate within the agenda item. Thank you.
You can stay here, Councillor Daniels, because and you have, sorry? No, well, I was just going to say, on the basis of obviously the instruction we have in terms of those declarations, particularly, I'd love to think that you had a controlling interest in Telstra. Councillor Daniels, however, I think you probably wouldn't be sitting here if that was the case. But the reality is our councillors can stay in the room, particularly in this matter, being of a nature where the amount of shares held by an individual is particularly insignificant, and on the basis of the likelihood of that being an influence in this decision, I certainly don't have an objection to Councillor Daniels staying in the room. Is there any objections to that? No.
There is a resolution here,
Yep. Which is? There you go. Thank you very much, Marnie. One we prepared earlier. And it's
declarable.
It's still a declarable.
It's voluntary. I thought it was a voluntary declarable.
Oh, I can put the words in if you want me to, but I always understood it was still a declarable.
Yes, but it's still, it's just so borderline. So great.
the more words the better. We'll stick them in. So run the risk of redundancy or Councillor Rolfe correcting us. Councillor Rolfe has moved that. Someone happy to second? Councillor Curtis to second it. All in favour? You're in the room, Councillor Daniels. Thank you. All right, that's for obviously 12.3.5, which is further down the road. No other conflicts, Councillor. As I said, if we get into a discussion where you think that might even be the case, that word voluntary will be key, because you can just jump in and say, hey, look, I'm not comfortable there. Declare it then and we'll record it at the time. So.
We'll have to now.
Yep.
Yeah. So as part of the training, the update from the Department of Local Government, we have to record who's voting for and against.
So you're all affirmatives currently. So I don't think you keep a spreadsheet on this anyhow, but anyhow, look, that's how we're going to record the results at each vote. Now, I'm referring to a person on my right-hand side, Sharon Houlihan, and I might have been a little remiss, perhaps looking for the opportunity today to welcome Sharon. And as you can see down the far end is our previous acting CEO, Michael Parker, who has gracefully moved 5 seats to the left and allowed Sharon here. Can I welcome you, Sharon, to our council? It almost feels like I know you're only going to say you've been here for 13, 12 days, is it 11?
8.
8 days.
Nearly 8.
And I guess for all of us, the expectation that Sharon has certainly been coming to us for some period of time from Victoria, from Wellington Council in Victoria, and I know they might be live streaming and watching today to see how she's going, so welcome, say hello to Wellington. Thank you very much for providing us with this CEO that we're now delighted to have here. Sharon has come via hotel quarantine, so she has been through the experience of spending 14 glorious days in a small room with no balcony and no opening windows. And she can certainly, having been in Victoria and local government for the last couple of years, can really appreciate how much fresh air and space we have up here after certainly the environment that existed down in Victoria for such a long period of time. So on the cheery note, we are certainly a region that has a lot of good things, and I guess that probably factored into the reason that you were interested in our place. We're so very, very glad that you did. I know there's a lot of work in front of us, and I know that councillors are really looking forward to having some time with you to share the things that they think are really important. And I think our community has been really, really waiting for a while to see who their new council leader is going to be. And I guess, you know, I think I've said this to you a couple of times. I reflect on probably a little bit further down a person's career, their reflections on their first day at work. And I was very, very mindful to make sure this is one that you enjoy and can say was a great time. And I'm just saying to you, I think there's a lot of hope and a lot of promise in our region. There'll be lots of challenges, and I guess like Rod referred to, like sending the rates notice out and seeing how popular we are the day after, and having to get through those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's a very rewarding thing. Local government is just that. It's the best form of government. And I know that you have a great love of it, and I guess that welcome extends to as long as you want to be here. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hayes and councillors.
So, on that cheery note, have you received any petitions in the 8 days that you've been here?
No, there are no petitions to be tabled.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We'll move on to our decision action reports, and our first one comes from our communities section under John McDougall, our General Manager. This is in relation to this Regional Council Sport and Open Space plan. I see Lisa Donlan has assumed the position. I'll hand over to you, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors and general public. It certainly makes me very proud to present this report today. We are here seeking in-principle endorsement of the Central Highlands Regional Council Open Space and Recreation Plan 2021 to 2031. I won't steal much of Lisa's thunder other than to say there has been an enormous amount of work that's gone into this plan. I'm really proud of where it has landed, not only for directional purposes for council strategically, but certainly for our public to lead the next 10 years of strategic direction in sport and recreation right across the Central Highlands region. I'd also like to acknowledge Lisa Donlan and Lisa's team. You've done a fantastic effort in getting this together, and the consultants that were engaged, along with your staff, have done a fantastic job. So I really would like to acknowledge that and please pass that on. Without further ado, I'll hand over and you can talk through the report. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, General Manager McDougall. Through you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. We're placing the open space plan before you for in-principle adoption. As I've noted in my paper, the previous adopted report was completed in 2014. And then in 2017, the game plan and the commitments that came with the game plan substantially changed how we look at open space and how we use it. So this plan covers parks and gardens and sport and recreation and all of those spaces across the entire region. There was an interim document as well that was developed in 2017, and council approved a name change to Parks People Play. That document was never brought forward. So while this one may seem a little in advance of the 10 years from 2014, because of the changes to game plan, it was necessary to update how we look at all of our open space moving forward. The document was the document's data-driven. It's heavily considered LGIP, a lot of community consultation, 2 rounds of community consultation in every one of the towns in Central Highlands, talking to a whole range of different users, from groups that are tenured in our spaces to those who just use the parks and the playgrounds. It considers supply and demand, not only of council spaces and recreation opportunities, but also, in some cases, private opportunities such as the Comet Showgrounds, the Blackwater Equestrian Centre, and it interplays all of those opportunities so that it guides council in where we would focus our future investment, regardless of who owns the opportunities for recreation. It also includes, in some cases, small schools where their recreational spaces are used by community outside of school hours. It It will essentially guide our choices and recommendations on how we maintain facilities and how we might consider what new facilities are necessary as we move forward over the next decade. And I've noted in the report that the costing for that will be provided to Council in the first quarter. That'll naturally happen as a part of the CapEx bids that will develop now based on the contents of the document. And with the formation of the new Project Management Office, we'll initially be providing the next 3 years, and then next year you'll see up to 10 years. So the entirety of recommendations in the document will be considered through that process. And of course, some of those projects may or may not be approved. It's an active document that's meant to be amended annually, and that will now form part of the work of the Sport and Recreation Group, that it's considered as to what we've already achieved, what we focus on moving forward, and then what opportunities we might have to put forward those CapEx bids that are considered in the report. And finally, one of the questions that I received from councillors was around whether it should be a strategy or a plan. And while all of that's being clarified through the governance process, I would suggest that this is a very operational document, and therefore it's appropriate to call it a plan. It will naturally have to align with other documents as they're created and endorsed. So there's always an opportunity to change the plan as required. That's all I have. Thank you, councillors. Mr Mayor, through you, any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. And I guess that salient point that you make at the end of that, in respect of it being a very operational plan, and certainly one that will be reviewed, I guess, annually. I'm certainly confident that with the team that you have and going on, I guess you'd say, just their performance, that obviously armed with this document now gives them a greater confidence as well. And provides, I suppose, at the end of the day, a really clear guideline, I guess, to at a very operational level, and where we might see this manifest itself, but in certainly in our budgeting and certainly consideration of the level of spending that we actually accord in our overall budget to sport and recreation versus our infrastructure versus our maintenance versus our operations. So I'm very confident, and I think it's a very comprehensive document to guide, I guess, us in that respect. So I just want to say that it is clearly data driven, which I think as a group we like to have, but it's obviously, and without there being a lot of numbers and figures and costs involved in there, if we were planning for the to obviously achieve all the things, well, there's a significant investment that needs to be made here over a long period of time, and it has sincere implication for I guess, the type of place we are. We're a young community. We've got an average age of about 34. We have lots of kids. We have lots of schools. And it's really pleasing for me to see things like those small schools and the opportunity of those spaces included in here as well, because it's become clear to us that as a group of people that are more armed with more data, we're in a better shape to actually quantify and probably support the anecdotal evidence we all have about the things we need to do, the things we need to share in a lot of cases to make sure that we get the opportunities around the region. So I commend you for the draft, and certainly happy to hear it. Councillor Syfe, you, I think you're first off the rank. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I'm just greatly relieved to see that this document has been brought forward for adoption, because without the adoption of this document, I wouldn't have liked to have seen any projects for sport and rec and open space in the current budget. So that brings me to the point 2 of the recommendation. Now, I understand the process, and I know what this second point is getting at, but the wording inclusion request the recommendations be considered by council for inclusion in future years' budgets. It just seems very distant to me. I'm just wondering why we have to put future years. What could the recommendation be changed to say request that prioritised projects be considered by council for budget preparation or something like that? To me, that just indicates to me that there's still a possibility that no projects will be getting up in the 22-23 budget. I know that's probably not the intent of that wording, but for me, on the outside, I would read it as very futuristic and not, for next budget. So I'm not sure how everyone else feels, but I just do have a concern about the futuristic nature of that wording.
Through the chair, the intention of that part of the recommendation was more so to give confidence to councillors that we will be going through the budget process similar to what we would do with any other capital or operational project. It was just to give you the confidence that we would still go through that we just couldn't ride roughshod, if that makes sense, and put anything through. So
I understand that, but you have actually lost my confidence by making it sound too futuristic. So I think through budget process, instead of having future year budgets put through consideration by council through through budget process, it sounds like it's going to happen and not just airy-fairy futuristic hearsay.
Yeah, I think it turns on a word there. I think if that, I think Sharon, there's some wording there you thought might help.
Yeah, I tried to capture that, Councillor Cypher. So I think we're comfortable that is the same intent as what was intended by this. So along the lines that prioritised projects be put to council for budget consideration via annual budget process commencing 2022-23.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest.
So, boy, I'm glad you came along today, Sharon. Thank you. Councillor Moriarty.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. This is a really great document because it captures so much. The one thing I was really pleased to see that it captured each of the 13 areas as well, even though from, I guess from that demographic perspective, it also talks about the SA2 levels. So that's really good. So my question, obviously this plan, which is some of that linkage is obviously going to happen, that linkage, as you were saying, strategically to, community vision, community corporate plan, livability, and then across to the SPGG, 10-year financial plans and asset management plans, but also what I'm hoping, I'm presuming it's going to be part of, that each of these actions that are for each of the 13 communities, that we can actually include those in the strategic directions for those communities. I certainly will be advocating to do that in the communities I associated with, and just to make sure it's clear that they're not the CRG's strategic directions, they are the community's strategic directions. The other thing that, and the reason why, there's a couple of reasons here that I found this report very important and very informative, and actually a little bit frightening, I guess. The one thing that hit me was that every time we get a report, similar demographics are included, and I know that we've got different points of call. I've asked about opportunities to look at different platforms. We've got the REM plan. Also like to see something around other providers as well there, so that we've got somewhere to go that's consistent for a whole range of data on the demographics, the economics, a whole range of trends, not just now but into the future. But I'll talk about that later. But the one thing that I found was that came out of here that I'll talk about later, I think, is that,
Councillor Moriarty, if we're not going to be able to talk about it later, if you know what I mean, we're going to have to keep our comments short and our questions short if we can, because we only have allowed 15 minutes for this discussion today. So.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My point is that we should know our communities better than anybody else, and it was very enlightening reading in there that we've got one community that's growing and all the rest declining. So I just want to make that point.
Yep, that's a good point. Right, Councillor Daniels.
Thank you very much. Well done with the report. It's great to have it in front of us. After, community consultation and years of development. So thank you for that. A question around the annual review. I think it's great that we are doing an annual review and then a major review at 5 years. I already looked through, the recommendations, and I know there's more, but you've got to focus on what's achievable. How do you see the annual review process taking place? Is it something that you'll go out to community to review, or is that the 5-year review?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, I would suggest that our team will go out annually and talk to community and review the plan through that process. Some of those things we already do through the sport and recreation team with those clubs that are tenured or the clubs that we deal with on that side of the report. On the public side, it might be a combination of presenting things to some of the community meetings and some surveys, but I would suggest that annually a larger review would be necessary because things are changing, particularly with the demographics and with the needs of community as people come and go. The larger review at year 5, I would suggest we probably would use the assistance again of an external consultant to review the demographics and to make sure that all of that data is updated. Because as we go through the first 5 years of the plan, we'd hope to have achieved some of those things, but the recommendations may change based on the demographics and what's in LGIP and all of that other data-driven information that's in there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, councillors, it's a short conversation for a big document, but I know it has been coming for some time, and obviously a lot of work has gone into it. Well, look, councillors, that recommendation is there, and with that new wording, I think that Sharon has provided for the second part of that. I might just read that out. So adopting in principle the first part, that's fairly self-explanatory. The second part requests that prioritised projects to be put to council for budget considerations via annual budget processes commencing 22-23, prioritised projects that is. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Cypher, second to Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Right. Thank you, John, and thank you, Lisa. Councillors, next comes under Corporate Services, under General Manager Margaret Gatt, and this is the Audit Committee independent members' discussion.
Thank you, Is that me?
That's the lift coming up, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This report is coming to you as a procedural matter in terms of the extension of 2 of the independent members of our important audit committee. I'll just hand over to Maggie, who is our Manager of Governance, to take us through the report. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Marg. Through the Chair, good morning, Mayor and councillors. The decision report before you today is to seek Council's endorsement regarding the extension of the term of appointment for the 2 independent members of Council's Audit Committee. This being the Chair, Mr Graham Webb, PSM, and the independent member, Mr Geoffrey King. Council is required in accordance with Section 105 of the Local Government Act 2009 to establish an audit committee. The current audit committee, as presented in our paper, is in accordance with clause 5.1 of Council's audit committee charter, comprises of the following 4 members: Mr Graham Webb, PSM Chair, as independent member; Mr Geoffrey King, independent member; Councillor Christine Rolfe, member; Councillor Janice Moriarty, member. The audit committee charter also provides under clause 6 for the terms of appointment. Independent members are appointed for a term of 3 years and may be extended for a further term subject to the composition and skill requirements of the committee. The maximum term is 6 years that can be served. Clause 6 also states the term should only be extended after the performance of the member has been reviewed. In relation to the independent members, Mr Webb and Mr King, their terms of appointment are ending in the coming months and an extension for each of the members is being proposed. Mr Webb's current appointment as Chair is due to expire on the 14th of February 2022. It is proposed that Mr Webb's appointment be extended for a further 12 months with an end date of February 23. My apology. This will mean Mr Webb will have served 4 years. Mr King's appointment is due to expire on the 16th of December 2021, and it is proposed that Mr King's appointment be extended for a further period of 12 months until December 22. It is important to note that Mr King's extension until December 22 will mean Mr King has served 6 years as Council's Audit Committee independent member. And in accordance with the committee charter, Mr King cannot be extended beyond this date. In performing their roles, both Mr Webb and Mr King are recognised for their valuable contribution to the Audit Committee and Council since being appointed, providing sound leadership, advice and expertise in areas of finance, governance, systems and risk management. The extension of the term of appointment for Mr Webb and Mr King provides the Audit Committee and Council with what is considered ongoing continuity and assurance in relation to Council's important financial and reporting obligations. This is the end of my report, and through the Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. Councillor Roll.
Thanks, Maggie. Having been on the Audit Committee since 2016, I consider that Mr King and Mr Webb are extremely professional and very good at their jobs, where I believe we're lucky to have them. For proper succession, I suppose, of the appointments of our independent members, it seems the right thing to do to have Mr King on until the end of next year, and so that we can stagger the appointment of the independent member. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Roll. And as an ex officio member of that same committee, I mean, I think in terms of the test, Mr Webb brings considerable previous local government experience to that role as well, which is it's very fortuitous for us and clearly regarded very highly by the government in respect of his opportunity of access to the office of the QAO and certainly in government. So he's very influential, and Jeff expressed his great interest in staying on. So I guess at the risk of it being very simplistic or oversimplistic, they would certainly like to retain their positions. So I guess that would be important as well. So councillors, I don't know whether councillors actually have to get off after 6 years. I think they can start as long as we make them, I suppose. But it's an appropriate rotation. It's generally corporate practice that directors rotate in accordance. So, councillors, the recommendation is that it's in two parts. One is obviously the 12-month extension for Mr Graham Webb, PSM, as the independent chair of that audit committee, and then part two is the 12-month extension for Jeff King's appointment as an independent member of the audit committee. Is someone happy to move? Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded Councillor Moriarty. All in favour? Against? Thank you. I don't know whether they'll be happy about you ringing them or not, Maggie. I think they will be happy.
I think they will be.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, moving along, the next agenda item 12.3 is under the hand of General Manager Michelle, which is under Customer and Commercial Services, Community Consultation Community Reference Group meeting schedule for 2022. Rebecca and Kat making it just in time. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, councillors, an annual report that's coming to you now in regards to the determination in regards to setting the dates for the councillor community consultations for 2022. This report also outlines for you the dates for noting in regards to community reference group meetings also for 2022. I'll just hand over now to Rebecca Brosnan, Manager of Customer Service, to present her report. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Webster. Through the Chair, good morning, councillors and visitors in the chambers. The report before you today provides a proposed schedule for Council's community consultation and community reference group meetings for 2022. Some context, community consultations in the various previous years, in 2019, we toured the region in the traditional roadshow format. In 2020, we had no community consultations due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we recommenced in 2021 with an enhanced schedule in a COVID-safe environment, so providing opportunity for council to reconnect with communities across our region. The proposed date and times have been compiled in consultation with area office staff, connected communities team members and the Office of the CEO. Feedback from the community and councillors throughout those forums have also been considered, and we've thoughtfully scheduled the meetings to meet community expectations and maximise attendance. So, we did receive much feedback through the consultations, particularly around the timing of consultations in some of our regional communities, and we've listened to councillor feedback in response to that, that councillors are happy to meet community when it suits them. So to the best of our ability, we have tried to schedule those meetings to meet community expectations. Once the dates have been endorsed, calendar invites will be sent out and all of the details will be provided to council staff, councillors, CRG members, and communication will be promoted through the normal networking channels as well. In terms of changes to the community consultation schedule for 2021, I just wanted to highlight that there is no date scheduled for Thierry for this year, and that's due to extremely low attendance in 2019, and we had no attendance this year at the consultation. So we're suggesting or proposing that community consultations be held in Thierry biannually. The trial of the 3 Emerald consultations in 2021 yielded low attendance numbers across all locations, and we're proposing for next year that we return to one date scheduled for Emerald in 2022. I'll hand over now to Kat just to speak to the CRGs.
Through the chair, as noted in the report, the dates and locations of the CRGs are subject to change by request of community members. So since the submission of this report, there has actually been a request from the Gemfield CRG to alternate their meeting days to be a Tuesday and Wednesday over the year to make those meetings more accessible to people who wish to attend. These meetings will be sent as date claimers through the corporate calendar and to each councillor as well. So those will be the source of truth for the most up-to-date information regarding those. But those changed dates will remain within the same week. It'll just be the different day there.
Thanks, Kat. Through the chair, we'll ask for any questions.
Thanks, Beck, and thank Kat. I know this is an extremely difficult process, and not because they're difficult people, but just getting dates and getting everyone to line up. And when they invented the Gregorian calendar, they didn't make enough days in the year, apparently. So anyhow, it is what it is. I know that you've sought a lot of feedback and that you've engaged with a lot of the stakeholders in this, including obviously with the CRG communities. You know, I just would like to put on the record there that Thierry is not missing out there insofar as there is a regular Thierry CRG meeting, and I guess as we understand that community, certainly the major players get the opportunity of that feedback opportunity. So I guess in a way we don't make them you know, interpolated in terms of one replacing the other, but I guess as long as there's an opportunity there, that's what we're seeking to do here. So councillors, questions? I see Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. Through the chair, just a question really around how we communicate about a community consultation is being held. Like, what process will we go through this next year to communicate to, you know, a very, very diverse communities that we have out there?
Thank you. Through the chair. Councillor Daniels, we will use and exhaust every avenue we possibly can to promote the consultations. Last year, as an example, we started to use boosting of Facebook posts. So that's paid promotion to try and get information out through that platform. I know that not everybody's on that platform, and we've heard loud and clear through a couple of the meetings that there needs to be other ways. Community notice boards, networks, CRGs linking in with other agencies in town to try and get them out, and through the schools again. So we did put newsletters out, or information about consultations, particularly in Emerald, through the school newsletters, and that's always happened in the smaller communities who have a community newsletter as well. We did miss some opportunities with a new area office coordinator starting in the east, in terms of those local people that we need to get in touch with to promote those consultations, and Bohinia would be an example. There are individuals in those communities that have their own network, and we missed an opportunity to link in with that network to make sure that the people in those areas were informed. We've learnt that lesson, and we won't be making that mistake again, and we've documented those gaps in our communication processes as well.
Okay.
Always open to suggestions on how we can communicate as well. If there's feedback out there on how or who we need to contact to get the message out, then we're happy to do that.
Yeah, there's always I guess, trends towards the older people in our population that attend, and I really would love to see us being able to engage with families and through that process. Obviously, we engage in our jobs, but whether we have a think about what ways we can actually attract a really diverse group of people to the meetings. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just on that, Councillor Daniels, before I go to Councillor Roll, I think it might have been Nicole and might have been Courtney that actually captured the minutes here at Emerald Christian College, and there was that talk about particularly the demographic that Councillor Daniels was talking about, perhaps, you know, the good old notice board, the flashing notice board that, you know, we seem to have some really good business in town that does a lot of that. So even if there was, you know, prior to or around the times of those, that those sort of things could be engaged. And I guess, you know, if we can try those, that'd be great as well. So I think that's been captured anyhow. Councillor Rolfe, yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. Rebecca, in the past, we've had separate meetings at some of these. We've got groups now because of the being held in public places. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity come 22 that we may be able to split them up again into, because I know that places, specifically Rolleston, Top Rain and who else you got, and Acadia Valley, Carnarvon, Acadia Valley, was originally split into 3, and you'd get numbers at each one of those meetings. So these are not grouped up because there was no numbers. This was only because it was a public place. So there may be an opportunity later on to split them up again if that's possible, please.
Yeah, and I think Yammer as well, Beck, there was a note there in that meeting here. The Emerald South meeting turned into the Emerald Yammer meeting, so we need, you know, and if people are happy to do that, and we can, you know, the opportunity affords itself, and I can see you grinding your teeth again there. I guess, it's just, no, I'm not, I know you're very keen to get all this coordinated, but it's about the framework that we have to work in as well, and I understand that might change and probably can change, so. All right, Councillor Daniels. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I meant to. I was going to mention Yammer as well. I didn't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great minds, Councillor Daniels. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much. I was just thinking that if we're not going to have that equity across all of the towns with community consultations, then I think perhaps there's an opportunity at Thierry once a year where at one of those CRG meetings that the mayor and other councillors are invited to that. It's really that communities want to meet up with council, the mayor and other councillors as well. The other thing, advertising, as Councillor Daniels referred to, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, I know with Emerald, there's that opportunity to work through the CRG to help promote if there's, you know, the one consultation for Emerald, we can actually work through the CRG and work through that network. But again, as I keep saying, there's other opportunities to engage with the community, like just going down to the shopping centre, even once a year at the different shopping centres here in Emerald, just to even tell people about what council does, and whether part of that's promoting the community consultations or not. I just think that we can do a little bit more of going to them rather than the community always having to come to us as well. So it might be that we look at different ways of engaging for Emerald being the bigger community as well.
Thanks, Councillor Moriarty.
Excuse me,
Go,
through the
Kat.
chair, just wanted to note in response to that, Councillor Moriarty, thank you, that the Mayor and councillors are always welcome to attend any of the CRGs at any point during the year in any of the communities. So if you'd like to, make a, if you'd like to be on the agenda and to share with the community in advance that you'll be, or you're planning to attend a particular meeting, where you're always welcome, and we're more than happy to promote that opportunity to those communities wherever you feel you would like to attend.
Thanks, Kat. Councillor Curtis.
Thierry being the unique little community that it is, if something major happens over there, is there a possibility that we could slot a community reference, community consultation meeting in, if need be?
Through the chair, yes, of course. We would come back, if that was a request from the from councillors, that we would come back to council with an addition to the schedule if need be.
No worries, thank you. I know where Lockington is, so I'm not going to get lost again this year.
No, we'll take the bag for some of that, Councillor Curtis. There were people taking bets on how long it would take you to get back, but anyhow. Councillors, that recommendation is there that we endorse that proposal, and obviously Beck's provided some of those riders about, some flexibility going through the year, and we've had some discussion about that. So is someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Cypher, second Councillor Moriarty. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you, Beck. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
I see you got your little invitation in there, so you expect to see more councillors at your CRG. That'll be good, yeah.
I know that the community would love to see you there. I personally have no expectations whatsoever, but we're always happy to have you.
You are sounding like a councillor, Kat. Thank you very much, then. Thank you, Michelle. The expression of interest for a licensed post office, Rolleston. This comes under Michelle's hand again. I'll turn it over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and some councillors in the room may be familiar. We've received this request previously from Australia Post, first time in 2013, and at that time council did not progress with the request in view that not all community avenues had been exhausted. We think potentially that may be the case again, but I had requested Manager of Customer Service, and Rebecca has undertaken significant research and touched base with other local governments in regards to providing some information for council informing this report. So I'll just hand over to Rebecca to deliver her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Through the chair, this report is seeking a position from council with respect to pursuing an expression of interest for the council to operate the licensed post office in Rolleston on a 3-year fixed-term licence. As General Manager Webster indicated, council has been approached previously in 2013 regarding taking over the licence from then the CRT Farm and Rural Supply Store, who advised Australia Post that they were going to relinquish their licence. Australia Post, we responded back to them saying, look, we would like you to go back out and seek some potential interest from the community. And they responded to us and let us know that the general store had accepted an offer from them to operate the store from 2014. The current owner of the Rolleston General Store has operated the post office in Rolleston since 2017 when he took over that business. And certainly in the conversation that I've had with him, it's definitely been on the basis of it being a community service and by no means a way of generating any revenue for the business. He has advised Australia Post that he intends to relinquish his licence at the end of January 2022. So council was approached at the end of September this year from Australia Post regarding whether or not we would pursue an expression of interest for a fixed term licence, which essentially means that council would not have to purchase the post office in the open market. We could take it over on that 3-year fixed term licence, and that would be reviewed at the end of that term for continuation. In terms of some of the research or preliminary analysis that I've undertaken with Australia Post, their representatives, And in speaking with other councils, specifically Warrabinda Shire Council, who operate a licensed post office, and also Longreach, where they have a post office in Ilfracombe. There are significant costs associated with operating a post office, and the host business bears the brunt of those costs. Revenue comes from the sale of products and processing of mail through commissions and certain fees. That information was, we've requested it, and Australia Post are quite happy to provide that information to us, but it wasn't available at the time of reporting, and some commercial confidence there that that information isn't shared more broadly, other than for us to undertake a financial analysis ourselves. So Australia Post provide their licensees with a gap payment. What that gap payment is annually is a top-up, I suppose. So you could look at it from the perspective, if the post office component generates revenue of, say, 30,000 for the year, Australia Post will top that up to a maximum of 40,000 for the year. All operating costs, so that's your staffing, accommodation, the technology, phone, fax, electricity, insurance, preparation of BAS, and all of those sorts of things are the responsibility of the licensee. So that would fall on council if we chose to pursue that. In terms of office space, we conducted a bit of an investigation into the fit-out requirements. Those of you that have visited the Ralston Transaction Centre, it is a modest facility. It's got the library component, a meeting room, small kiosk. The back office area is quite small. There's just one little nib wall that separates the back office from the bathroom. So it's quite modest, and we expect that to incorporate Australia Post into that facility would need, some modification and extension to be able to support the delivery of that service. The main thing being that designated area for parcels that can't be accessed by the public. Is certainly something that Longreach shared with us through their experience. Is something that they overlooked and had to retrofit later to make sure that they could provide the service. In terms of operational activities, there is a mail delivery contract. There's 2 of them in Springshaw. They are separate to this expression of interest from Australia Post. So 2 independent contractors responsible for the mail delivery. Australia Post did confirm that where you have a local post office, that post office has a liaison role between those 2 separate contractors. They shared that if there wasn't someone in Ralston that takes over, that the delivery schedules would need to be reset and changed, and they would be processed out of Springshaw as the closest licensed post office, but mail delivery would still occur. There's also the post office boxes component. So there's just under 50 post office boxes at the general store, and they were able to provide just some overarching statistics around the volume. So about 150 parcels a week are collected, 62% of those between midday and 3 p.m, with Wednesday being their biggest day for parcel collection. So they also have those other bill paying services and obviously processing mail as well. But those post offices do generate some revenue for the post office. As I said there, the range of mandatory services are banking, money orders, bill payment services, etc. for Ergon and Telstra. Employee requirements because of those banking services means that any employee that's providing that service has to undertake anti-money laundering checks. The Australia Post confirmed that this can be the most difficult and most challenging in terms of operating the service from their perspective, because it can take 3 months to process someone through those checks. If there's any mistakes on the paperwork, the process starts again. So it starts back at day 1 of a 90-day process. So that's the biggest challenge from their perspective, is making sure that you've got the continuity of qualified and suitably checked off people to provide the service. No one can just come in and provide relief work unless they've been through that 90-day check. Employees, so looking at the model components and the fact that Australia Post confirmed last time in 2013 and again this time that the post office, it can't support itself. The preferred model is that they have a host business because there's not enough volume going through it for it to be a standalone. We considered the FTE requirement based on the level of, I suppose, risk and responsibilities associated with providing the monetary side of it, and then also the backup contingency. So we've suggested that at least 1.5 FTEs would be required to operate it as a separate legal entity, and we would be the host business, but it would operate from the same premise, but be completely separate and independent. Those costs are provided in the report. Finally, some feedback from those councils, as I said, that I've been in touch with, noted that it is the labour costs and the availability of staff that are major challenges for them in operating the post office. Warrabinda is a cashless society, and so the council there had no choice, they felt, that other than to take it on because of the nature of the community and the needs that they have. And Ilfracombe also said the same thing, that they've actually just gone through quite an exhaustive process and delay in service trying to recruit someone to fill a position in their Ilfracombe branch. So both sites noted that it comes at a considerable cost to council to provide the service. They make no revenue or anything from the post office. It costs council to provide that to the community. At this stage, there is no budget associated or that currently exists to take on the operation, and I have included some indicative costs there based on the information we were able to get in terms of what those operational costs might look like, plus the employee costs. I'll now hand over to the Mayor if there was any questions about the report.
Thanks, Beck, and I guess in the community we have examples where small communities like Comet, lost their facility and for the same reasons, and in an empirical fashion, similar to what you say, Australia Post are offering, certainly in that instance, post office boxes at Blackwater or Emil, which is totally inappropriate, and Councillor Daniels did a lot of work about actually getting an extension of certainly deliveries to that community, but certainly there's a lot of good reasons why it's probably not something that council can extend their resources to, but I think we should be mindful of probably what some of the options might be, and we can be supportive in that respect, so hopefully we can. Councillor Cypher. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, we can't be everything to everybody, but just to confirm that Springshaw Post Office, their contractors, will deliver mail over to Rolleston?
Through the
they already do that, so so Rolleston doesn't even have a contractor. So they'll still get their mail.
Yes, through the Chair. Australia Post confirmed to me that the two separate mail delivery contracts, one for the rural and one for in-town, they currently process and get their mail out of the Rolleston General Store because there's one locally. If that doesn't exist, they will process out of the Springshaw Post Office, but they'll still deliver. It's just where the actual contractors get the mail to do the delivery. So instead of being Rolleston, it'll be Springshaw.
Okay, and when they go, sorry I don't know this, but so do every resident in Rolleston have a post office box where they will be outside their house, so the mail will be dropped in there if there's no longer the little black boxes?
Through the Chair, there are normal postage arrangements in Rolleston.
Right.
However, there are those 49 PO boxes that I would say some residents and some rural customers would be utilising as well. But unlike Capella, where it's all PO boxes, that's certainly not the case in Rolleston.
Okay, righto. So they will still have a service?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cypher. Yeah, so councillors, I guess we may go down, probably if we can, supporting them if there's not a sufficient. There was certainly a comment that same scenario was part of it, but obviously there was some adjustments they tried to make to the contract then, of course, as well, to the number of drop-off points. So perhaps we'll try and exercise our influence if we have any there. So, yeah. Sorry.
I was really going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I think the learnings we've had from Comment was different, slightly different scenario. That there's still options that can work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much. I know that council is the option of last resort, but I did note that, and thank you for clarifying, I wasn't sure whether Rolleston was serviced, I couldn't remember whether they were serviced out of Springsure or Mara, so that's good. So, and I'm still not sure, are you saying that there's mail delivery to a point, or that the mail delivery is to the individual post boxes?
So through the chair, Rolleston have a normal mail delivery service to their mailbox at home if they choose.
Yeah.
But they also have an option to take out a PO box if that's their preference. So what happens at the moment is the mail does come in to the Rolleston General Store as the licensed post office. It's then the mail contractors that pick it up from the general store and do the runs. So what they're saying is if there's no Rolleston post office, they'll collect the mail from Springsure as the next or closest licensed post office, and then they'll still do their mail delivery run to Rolleston. So they'll have to reset their schedules, they've said, so basically their days and times might change, but they'll still have a service. It'll just be processed out of Springsure instead of Rolleston.
Thank you. My main concern is that we spoke about Comet, but Comet's a lot close. Not that I want to see anything go from any communities, but Comet is a little bit closer to Emerald than Rolleston is to other communities as well, and it provides a base for a lot of rural residents as well. My only thing was I did notice in your report, maybe I read that wrong, that there hadn't been any consultation with the community at all, because before I could make a decision properly, I think I would have to understand some of that, social and economic impacts for businesses and visitors and people living in the community. So I'm still trying to get my head around that. Thank you for all your hard work.
Through the chair, just in terms of engagement, they contacted the previous licensees initially because they consider that they're already established. So they would prefer, the reason they haven't gone out more broadly, and this is Australia Post engaging, not council engaging as yet, but they haven't gone out more broadly because they prefer to go with those established businesses, and there aren't many in town. So they have approached those businesses, and us we're included in that to see if we're interested at all. Their next process will be to communicate quite broadly. They even said through the federal and local members, to try and get the word out there. Is there any local interest in doing it, in operating the post office? It could be a local cafe might reopen, and if they had some security of knowing that they've got people coming in to pick up parcels, they might peruse and have a coffee and buy a gift. They might be more inclined to go out on that venture and reopen the cafe if they had that constant volume of people coming through to access the post office services. But that's I'm only speaking from potential options there, but they haven't engaged more broadly yet because they want to make sure that there's no established businesses that would be interested before they go to that next step.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, when you say they're going to sort mail and do it from Springsure, well, they've got Buckley's because there's no room in that post office to do it. I know that from personal experience, so I don't know how they're going to fit in another 1 or 2 mail services in their sorting on the days that every day, 4 days a week it goes out of the post office in Springsure, and it's too small for the contractors to be in there and trying to sort mail and things ready to go. And the other thing is, that's 80k away. Those mail runs that go from Rolleston are long enough anyway in a day. So I think that's just not a practical solution in my eyes.
Thanks, Councillor Carpenter. Well, I guess there's a couple of issues there. With the greatest respect, I acknowledge the knowledge of some of those logistics, but I guess, and I don't mind the sound this to be coarse, but that can't be can't be our responsibility. I guess it's the opportunity for us to establish the post office. There may be an opportunity in the community, and it might be offered to the community, which is part of this resolution, to take up that opportunity. And I think in some cases, I know certainly from Comet, they use the Comet Hall as a little bit of a gathering point for some of those things. So there is some, you know, I guess you'd say manoeuvring that can happen to provide a service, and I guess we did get involved in that process. So I guess that might be the case here, but certainly what we're asking to consider today is certainly for us to do it, and I suspect the recommendations there saying that we decline that, but recommend that we certainly ask the community to be, I guess, canvassed, and then we can be supported there, I guess, in that role. So,
Just very quickly, Mr Mayor, so the recommendation really is for council to decline, the expression of interest, and that it go back out to the community more broadly, and then there would be potentially that Australia Post would probably come back to council to have some further conversations around some potential options. There may be different kind of, as you were rightly saying, what kind of other options are there?
I think there is some messaging in the community already that people might have, and they will come back to us. So I think you will see it come back. So, so that recommendation is there. Is someone happy to move? Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded. Councillor Burns, all in favour? Against? Thank you. I think that'll be recorded, Janice, the way we're going to record it now. Marnie, is it? Yep. Okay. Councillors. No, that's fine. Councillors, we've got a very kind invitation to have morning tea in the gallery. And that's extended to everyone that's actually here today. It's from this gallery to go down to that gallery. There is a morning tea down there. I think the exhibit there is One Story Isn't Enough. That's the Emerald State High School award, and I think there was about 200, Kat's not here, but I think we're up to about 250 people that came in there on Friday night. Sharon and her husband Jeff were there, and tons of other people as well. It was just amazing to see the talent. So anyhow, I won't spoil that surprise for you, but look, councillors, I guess just with the load we've got today, can we be here back here as close as we can to about 11? So we've got half an hour and we might head back up, and I'm sure Ruth won't think we're being rude, but we've got to get through some stuff today. So let's take this opportunity. I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll resume it.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, there was one vote against with that last resolution, please. Thank you.
Well spotted, Councillor Moriarty. Just working with our template here, Councillor Moriarty. All right, meeting adjourned. We'll come back up here at 11. Thank you. You just want that the finance related thing just to go into the report.
Yeah, just to the end.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's what I thought I was going to do. So yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Jesus. In the agenda, which relates to the disposal of assets, this comes under General Manager Michelle Webster's area, and Andrea Hewitt is here as the Coordinator of Property Services. It allows Michelle to introduce this.
So, thank you, Mr Mayor. So, councillors, you'll be aware of the 3-year rolling program to dispose of aged housing assets. And this report before you today seeks a resolution to apply for an exception under the Local Government Act so that we may dispose of that employee housing to Woorabinda Aboriginal Shire Council. And I'll just hand over to Andrea Hewitt to discuss her report and why the report is before you. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, General Manager Webster. Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. So this report, as Michelle mentioned, is to apply the exception under Section 236 of the Local Government Regulation to dispose of current employee housing to the Woorabinda Aboriginal Shire Council as a government agency defined under the regulation. The two properties that have been identified are 34 Mary Street and 35 Elizabeth Street at Doringa. So both properties have been identified for disposal. The Woorabinda CEO is currently renting 35 Elizabeth Street from us, and 34 Mary Street is currently vacant. So we have obtained market valuations for both of these properties. So the 35 Elizabeth Street property has come back at $100,000, and 34 Mary Street, we have a flying fox situation at that particular property. So they've given us two separate valuations. So with the current flying foxes, they've said $55,000, and if we do the dispersal and remove the trees and everything, $70,000. So in that instance, it's probably not worth removing the flying foxes because there's not a great deal of difference between the costs there. We have previously tendered properties in Doringa. We tendered the two properties twice. We didn't get any tenders in the first tender. We received tenders in the second tender. All tenders received were below market value, and we've accepted tenders below market value. And we've just taken into consideration costs about the ongoing maintenance of the properties and those ongoing costs that we would have, and open sale fees and commissions that would be associated with that. So the information is in the report about the sale prices and the market values for those particular properties. The resolution does include component where if Woorabinda Council doesn't want to go ahead with the sale, we'll continue to apply the original resolution. So we'll go through the tender process and the open market process if it's not sold at tender. So the sale to Woorabinda Council would provide us a cost benefit because we are selling at market value. We're not taking a lower price. And we don't have those additional costs associated with tender, auction or open market listing. I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the report now.
If I could just add to that, Mr Mayor, too, just for over a number of years, we have ongoing requests from Woorabinda Aboriginal Council to provide them, to assist them with housing within Doringa, and that's hence why we formally wrote to the council to see if they were interested in these properties, of which they indicated that they were. So this is how this has come about.
Thanks. Michelle, so councillors, questions? There's a lot of information in that report. Thank you very much for that, Andrea. I accept that obviously this has been part of a process, and there's obviously a lot of information and detail on each of the properties, I guess, in our strategy. But obviously the recommendation there, councillors, is that we apply for the exception, and the second one is obviously a delegation to CEO Sharon to negotiate those terms, and three, just I suppose the claimer in there that obviously in the event that it's not successful in that negotiation, that obviously the resolution that we applied in 25 August 2021 continues, so that that we can seek, I guess, other avenues to dispose of the property. So, happy to move it. Councillor Cypher's moved it. Sorry, councillor, question.
Just one question. Sorry, I noticed within it, the community reference group had some objections within that or concerns of the selling of the houses. So I'm just unsure how to word it. Sorry. First on their concerns. And also, my concern is why is Warrabinda looking at housing people within our area rather than at Warrabinda?
Yep. Well, I don't know the answer.
So I'm unsure how to word it, sorry. So
through the chair, I understand that some of the council staff can't actually reside in Warrabinda, so they need to reside elsewhere, which is why the CEO is in Doringa. So I think that my understanding is that these two properties would be for council staff to reside nearby rather than travelling a long distance. The CRG has been, the comments around the disposal of housing has been about, you know, what are we going to do with the staff and rehousing, that kind of, those kind of components. So I'm not sure what their thoughts are going to be on us disposing directly to Warrabinda, but they certainly have some concerns around the staff housing components, and Michelle might have more comment there.
Yeah, I just might add to that. Well, I suppose, I mean, we're not removing the houses, so housing is still staying within. Councillors will be aware, and we've spoken before, that we did have capital budget to commence some additional new housing in Doringa, so I do understand, do you mean, from what I understand, the concerns around the CRG was more so around the employee housing. We have had, no, Councillor Carpenter shaking her head. Well, I don't have any other information, but in regards to the staff housing, you will be aware of the property that was sold recently to one of the council employees. We've been engaging with other employees who haven't taken up that option to purchase at the home that they're in. Council will have a report to the Strategy and Briefing Forum in January in regards to forward-looking, what we're looking at in regards to Doringa itself.
So I'm not sure how they're going to affect the resolution today. I guess that is something we will have to obviously communicate back, certainly to those that raise those concerns with the CRG. But I think this is a strategy, and this outside of I suppose the obviously intent of from an administrative perspective to make sure the housing is that I guess the housing management is managed well. The community I guess you'd say impacts certainly have got to be considered in this, but I think the strategy has always been, and this is my understanding, this is about the disposal of some of our accommodation in order to probably make ourselves a better stock of housing at some point, and I think that's always been the General Manager's indication to us, and I would expect to see that reinvestment, which I think was, I figured was the condition of us kind of approving the strategy, that it would be reinvested and make sure that that housing is fit for purpose. And I understand what you're saying, Councillor Brimley. I know that there's certainly a community interest in any, when you have a community the size of Doringa, any of the properties and any of the makeup of that community is important to them. But I think we need to reinforce that with the community, that this is about a style of housing where we're operationally shifting, but our investment will come back to that, and that is, I think, a commitment we've given in the past. So, sorry, Councillor Moriarty, you had a...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, along with others, attended the community consultation at Doringa, and the community was concerned that council had housing that was vacant for a long time, but council is moving to sell and dispose of and build new, so that's all progressing, I think. And the other thing, I just, when I read this, I was hoping that potentially one of those houses would be for the staff from the cultural centre as well. That was really important, that I think, that they were struggling to find accommodation, shall I say, and this is an opportunity to provide accommodation, hopefully to support the cultural centre, so that the centre can continue to flourish and potentially attract staff to stay there as well, to run that centre, which is important for everybody, I think.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Cypher had moved it. Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you, Councillors. Carried. Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you, Michelle. Councillors, the next report, I might understand, Michelle, you might lead this off, and
Yes.
John's there to give some input if need be, and with Andrew again. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the next report for you again seeks an exception under the Local Government Act. For the purpose of this report, though, for the disposal of land by means of a lease. This report seeks, I suppose, to start to progress and tidy up some of the land tenure matters in regards to the land that the Emerald Preschool and Community Kindergarten reside upon. So I'll just hand over to Andrea to speak to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. So this report is seeking a resolution to apply section 236 relating to exception to a community organisation, which Emerald Preschool and Community Kindergarten are. The proposed lease takes on whole of Lot 6, which is where the new building is being constructed, and part of Lot 8, which will be determined by survey. So Lot 8 is the current location of the Emerald Kindy. It should be noted that Lot 8 is a reserve for kindergarten, and there are specific requirements council needs to meet if we enter a lease under for that part of the land, and their requirements under the Land Act, which will include survey and registration of the lease. The Kindy holds a current registration as an incorporated association, as listed on the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission, so they meet the definition of community organisation. They're currently utilising the current council building without a formal agreement in place, so there's been some discussion around that formal lease since 2010, but nothing has progressed with that. So we want to move forward with the actual lease for the newly constructed building, so that will mitigate any of those risks associated with their use and ensure appropriate terms and conditions for the use are implemented, and making sure that, you know, the use of the building and what council is required to do and what they're required to do is pretty clear in that lease agreement. So once the resolution have been received, so council officers will begin the negotiations with the Kindy and work through any important considerations. So it should be noted that the Kindy is unlikely to be a commercial arrangement, and depending on the term of the lease, there'll be costs associated with the drafting of the agreement, registration on title, survey, and depending on the term, reconfiguration of lot application will be required through council. So we're probably looking at about $10,000 in costs associated with all of that process. I'm happy to take any questions in relation to this.
Councillors, questions?
Just
Councillor Moriarty.
Oh yeah, just one. Thank you very much, Andrea. I wasn't really sure because I'm not very good at this stuff, but so this is really the lease arrangements for the new, where the new site is. It doesn't include where the current. Okay, good. Thank you.
Right, sorry, Councillor Daniels. Yeah.
Thank you. So with this type of lease, is the lease only with the community, the not-for-profit incorporation, or is it something that can then be sold on or transferred onto someone else outside of our control?
So under this resolution, it can only be the Emerald Preschool and Community Kindergarten. We'll probably put terms within the lease agreement itself that it can't be transferred, and that's a requirement of the Land Act as well. So it can't go beyond the term of the reservation type. It can't be transferred or anything like that. So those sort of things will need to be within the lease document, and the resolution can only apply to a community organisation. So if they're wanting to sell to a commercial entity, then that doesn't meet the resolution or the exception requirements, which we would have to tender, we would have to tender the lease basically if they weren't a community organisation. So that's it.
Answer everyone's questions. Sorry, Councillor.
Just quickly, but you're saying that it's called the Emerald Preschool and Community Kindergarten. Is it an incorporated body?
Yes.
It is? That's right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Councillor Brimble-Combe is happy to move that recommendation, which is in two parts. It's improved the exception under the section 236 rather. And obviously the delegation comes as the second part of that to the CEO to undertake that due diligence and negotiate the terms. Is there a seconder? Councillor Daniels, all in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Councillors, this is 12.3.5. Councillor Daniels indicated her voluntary declarable conflict. Thank you. In relation to this matter, we've made a determination that Councillor Daniels can stay in the room for this discussion on the basis of her shareholding in Telstra. Councillors, this is about telecommunications lease. This comes under Michelle again, and I guess in the absence of Melissa, I guess Andrew will be here to talk to it again. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, councillors, so another report to you for an exception under the Local Government Act, again for the purposes of disposal of land by way of entering into a lease. So this relates to telecommunications lease for some telecommunication infrastructure on council property. So I'll hand over to Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And I just want to flag at the beginning, we just need to amend the resolution slightly, so I'll discuss that further. So this report is in relation to an application for the installation of telecommunications infrastructure on council-owned or controlled land in Doringa, Bluff and Dingo. The grant of a lease is essentially a disposal of a non-valuable current asset under local government regulations, and therefore we either need to invite tenders or undertake a public auction. However, an exception does apply under section 236 to allow disposal for the purposes of a lease for a telecommunications facility, but council needs to apply this exception. In late 2020, Council provided written support for the proponent's Federal Government Regional Connectivity Program grant application. QCN was ultimately successful in obtaining the grant to improve connectivity in Doringa, Bluff and Dingo. The need for improvements to telecommunications infrastructure in these communities have been identified and articulated in Council's adopted Community Plan, Central Highlands 2022 Community Plan Refresh. The application has been received from QCN, who has appointed Channel Wireless Proprietary Limited as the principal contractor. Any agreement would ultimately be between Council and Channel Wireless. QCN have initially identified Lot 20, being the Council Depot in Doringa, as the preferred site. This is subject to their due diligence being undertaken, and that is why we haven't specified particular lots on the resolution, just locations. So the proposal is to construct a two-storey telecommunications tower on the roof of the existing building. The land is included in the community facility zone under the planning scheme, and the proposed use would require an impact assessment. Therefore, community will be required to have consultation. QCN are still investigating both council-owned and controlled land as well as private-owned locations in Dingo and Bluff, and the resolution does not identify a specific site, as this may change depending on due diligence. QCN have advised the coverage area for a two-storey tower would encompass approximately 420 kilometres squared and provide standard services for a radius of approximately 20 kilometres. The roof-mounted lattice tower would have a footprint of 21.8 metres and be between 25 and 37 metres high. Construction is estimated to take 3 days with minimal disruption to the depot and can occur outside business hours if required. The infrastructure project will provide community benefits, seeing the increased internet speeds for schools, police and ambulance station, as well as residents and visitors. QCN further advised that the 3 townships will have download speeds of 10 times faster than what is currently available in these areas. The legal costs could be up to $5,000 to enable negotiations of a new agreement with better terms. The proponent is seeking a free leasing arrangement, however, has indicated it is open to discussions around legal costs. The existing copper ADSL services will eventually be switched off, which will degrade the level of connectivity. There is no specific dates provided as to when this is likely to occur, however, it is expected soon. Council not progressing with the telecommunications lease with the proponent may have a reputational risk where an opportunity to improve local telecommunications is foregone. So just as an amendment to the resolution only states council-owned land there. We should say council-owned or controlled land. So that'll take in any reserves or leasehold land that we currently hold that they may look at in the future. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks. So we're just getting that amendment there. Just make sure that's right too, please, Andrea. Just. Yep. Okay. All right. Councillors, you might recall that QCN, being the successful tender in this respect, were certainly an organisation assisted by the Central Highlands Development Corporation, played a big role in actually making sure that they were well informed, and they suitably acknowledged the Development Corporation. So it was and will be, provided these obviously these pieces of infrastructure can go there, a great help to those communities. As you know, that cable runs along the Capricorn Highway, and this is certainly the first edifice, I guess, of something actually happening and tapping into it in a way that's going to benefit those communities, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that can happen. So, councillors, questions on the lease, or Councillor Brillicombe.
Just first question. Several questions. It's the existing workshop floor. So how does that affect the people working within that workshop?
We haven't had those negotiations, we haven't had those discussions with QCN as yet. General Manager Houlihan has raised a number of concerns as well. We didn't want to progress negotiations if council didn't accept the resolution. So there, the implications on the structure, whether that's suitable or not, any radiation that might be coming out of that facility, and any impact on the workers. So they're the discussions that we need to have.
I suspect it's due to its location close to the Telstra facility. The other possibility is up at the water treatment plant, where there is existing infrastructure with the police radio and ambulance radio. So
yes, we have been discussing with Marvin about locations, including a water tower at Bluff potentially. So they're ongoing discussions. So that's why we've kind of left it open with the locations. And if their due diligence identifies that none of those are suitable, that the structures are not suitable for what they want to put on, then we won't negotiate any further with that.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess the takeaway, Councillor Brimmelcombe, is that obviously that'll be a consideration of any negotiation under that delegation to make sure that anyone's safety is obviously critical in that. So, thanks, Councillor Brimmelcombe. Any other questions, councillors? Certainly acknowledge General Manager Houlihan there for making sure that he's watching over his workforce as well. So, appreciate that. Councillors, the recommendation is there with that slight change. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Roll, second by Councillor Brimmelcombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you very much, Andrea. Councillors, item 12.4 moves across to Acting General Manager Houlihan, who is now not the only Houlihan here, but he's a subordinate Houlihan in this instance, but this relates to the proposed Capella water treatment plant and temporary pipeline temporary upgrades, and Councillor Cypher might give us a bit of an update too as part of that report at some point. Thank you. Jason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report provided here today presents Council with an option to a proposal to bring forward some works to temporarily upgrade the Capella water treatment facility to meet the current demand. During a workshop in October, Council was made aware of some operational issues in Capella with regard to the capacity of the water treatment plant and the worsening reliability of the Capella Thierry pipeline. Compounding these issues at the time was the low dam levels in Capella, which has subsequently been alleviated with some good flows in Capella Creek. The dam levels were at 24% at that point in time, and they're now at 87%. To address these operational issues, a number of options were investigated and presented today to proposed projects to bring forward some capital and operational expenditure into this year's budget. With regard to the pipeline, the Capella Thierry pipeline, and the replacement of some sections of that, on the General Council meeting of the 10th of November, Council a resolution, council formed a resolution with regard to applying for a Building Our Regions Round 6 fund for the Capella Thierry pipeline, with a funding application of $2 million, being a $4 million project, 50% funded through council. Successful applications for that round of funding will be notified in late June, and we have our fingers crossed on that being successful. With relation to the capacity of the water treatment plant, the proposal as presented here today is to install a ultrafiltration plant at the Capella water treatment plant, with an OPEX expenditure being brought into this year. As mentioned in the report, there was a community briefing last night on the Capella water issues, which was very successful, and that formed part of our consultation around future projects relating to Capella water. So with regard to the resolution, as mentioned, there are two parts. The first is to hire and install an ultrafiltration plant of a 2 meg a litre capacity to meet the current expected peak supply requirements. A budget requirement of $300,000 included in the operational budget of this year. The inclusion of $200,000 as a capital project to fund the design of the replacement of around 12 kilometres of the Thierry pipeline, expecting that we may be receiving that grant in next year's funding opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, James. And before we do, I might just ask Councillor Curtis, Councillor Cypher obviously helped-facilitate that meeting last night, so maybe you might add some. Charlie, you'll have to turn your mic off there.
Oh, sorry,
you're right.
thank you.
No, that's right. Councillor, yeah. No, you're right. Go, Councillor Cypher.
Thank you. On behalf of the Capella community, I'd like to thank Jason and your team and my fellow councillors and Mayor Hayes for attending last night. The community greatly appreciated that. And we were fortunate that the rain has come. It has certainly taken the pressure off a very delicate situation by getting that water 86% in those dams. However, it hasn't solved our problem. And I think the biggest relief the community had last night was to know that there is something going on behind the scenes, that we haven't forgotten the necessity of securing a permanent water supply for Capella, and that obviously the information provided last night went beyond what this recommendation and what this report actually highlights, but it included the possibility of having external partners in perhaps a new pipeline that would be sufficient to be the permanent long-term water supply for Capella. I think that was a huge relief to that community. So that's pretty much my take on it. I've received, following the meeting last night and this morning, some very positive feedback, a sense of relief from that community. So, and I assured them that we won't be resting on our laurels, that we will be continuing to work behind the scenes. And I've also had that commitment from Jason. As long as Jason and I are sitting in this seat, in our seats, that we will continue to work together for that permanent supply. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cypher. Nat, did you want to add anything else, Councillor Curtis?
I'd just like to say, I think the feeling from the meeting when they actually got the information, because there was so much uncertainty about what was going on because they hadn't been informed on anything. Once that gets out to the community, I think there'll be, there is already a lot more relief, because they know that we're being proactive and are working for the community to secure that water supply for them. Yeah. And thank you, Jason and Marvin, for being there.
Thanks, Councillor Curtis. I think that summed it up pretty well. Councillor Cypher, Councillor Curtis. and it was raining while we were sitting there. But no, it was, I think as much as we've drilled about, you know, the level of our sharing operational information at times, the reality is, I mean, I think if we read our communities right, they just need at times that salve and that input from you know, our team, and I do commend Jason and Marvin because you know, as a general manager, as an officer, you've got to go to a public meeting and hold the line, and but you've also got to be conscious of, you know, the concerns that Councillor Cypher and Councillor Curtis raised, and people were there to ask good questions, and you're right, Jason, they asked sensible questions, and you handled that very well. So even though I called Marvin Alvin a couple of times, and if you watch children's television, you know why that happens, but I apologise to Marvin, but anyhow, but it was the two officers did an excellent job last night, and it was well run, and people went home happy, which is. But as Councillor Cypher says, there's an expectation they need us to keep working on this, and the solutions that Jason's proposing, I think, are very sensible, and you know, they ask questions about budgeting and stuff like that, so people are very conscious of, you know, they do want things, but they also understand things they've got to get paid for. So that was a good conversation. So. But look, any questions on the actual infrastructure or the proposal there? Councillor Moriarty.
Excuse me. No, not a question, but just like to support Councillor Curtis and Councillor Cypher and council staff for actually moving forward on this project, because two of the critical things that council are committed to doing, particularly for public health, is sewerage and water. So I just commend, and I know that this has been an issue for a long time, and I can almost feel the sigh of relief from the community over the years, having talked about securing water for Capella. So well done, everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Moriarty. Councillor, that recommendation is there, which is in three parts, and Jason's outlined the 2 megalitre capacity obviously increases our 0.7 to 0.8 capacity currently, so that does a lot of sensible things, and obviously the budgeting there and the capital for those, sorry, in 4 parts, I should add. So they're very sensible and probably very specific directives here in this recommendation. Someone like to move those? Moved by Councillor Cypher, seconded Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Jason. And on a completely separate issue, but certainly within your department, Jason, this is the Cycle Network Local Government Grants program that I guess you shared some information with us previously.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to identify projects that may be included in an application for the funding through the Queensland Government's 2022-2023 Cycle Network Local Governments Grant Program, and that's a very long grant's name. The project which we proposed to forward an application for is the cycleway between the Nagai River and Campbellford Drive here in Emerald. Through the funding, the Department of Transport and Main Roads provides funding to councils to deliver best practice, high quality and safe bike riding infrastructure and facilities through that contribute to the connected networks for people riding bicycles. Funding is targeted at delivering the highest priority routes that are identified in the Principal Cycle Network Plan, which was a TMR document that was adopted in 2014. Council provided maps to that to be included in that document, and those maps have been included on the hub for councillors to have a look at. As mentioned, the funding is with regard to the highest priority routes, of which there are only routes that are in Blackwater and Emerald. The lower priority routes are across some of our other towns, such as Capella, Springsure and Rolleston. So to meet the eligibility criteria, there was only for the 2 towns that actually could be applied for. The grant is a 50% funding from the state, and that has to be matched by council with a 50% contribution. The council may note on the maps with regard to the project that's been identified, the specific route from Campbellford Drive through to the Nagai River in the attached map is on the northern side of the railway line. However, in consultation with the Department of Transport and Main Roads through this funding application or funding identification around the program, to be eligible for the project must be on a principal route identified or on an endorsed principal cycle network, or an alternative alignment that delivers the same network outcome as evidenced by further planning. So in consultation with the Department of Transport and Main Roads, we've run past them the alternative route being on the southern side of the railway line, connecting Campbellford Drive to the River, and they are confident that it meets the same objectives as the route that was identified in 2014. Given that, that's mentioned, that's the proposal. The nominations submissions close on the 17th of December, and successful projects will be announced through the Queensland Transport and Roads Investment Program, QTRIP, in their state budget in June. Any future if this project was successful, it would be included in the council's budget for 22-23. In relation to the selection of this project, the alignment with the future upgrade of any pedestrian bridge across the Niagara River has been considered, and the prioritisation of this route has been based on the condition of the current footpath. So following our discussions previously around the selection of this footpath, I can confirm that the condition of the existing footpath is at end of life and would need to be funded by council in the coming years if this grant was unsuccessful. So on that note, I'm happy to take any questions with regard to this report.
Thanks, Jason. Councillor Cypher.
So 275,000 is our contribution. How much footpath in a community that does not have a footpath would $275,000 lay? Approximately. I won't hold you to your response.
Through the Chair, approximately about, I think this grant we are proposing, I think it's 1.2 kilometres for the 550, so if we half that and say about 500 metres based on establishment costs.
Okay. My second question is, at the end there you said that the footpath under discussion was nearing the end, was at the end of its life and would have to be replaced in a few years to come. How many years would that footpath have left?
Through the Chair, the footpath has considerable safety issues now, trip hazards which have been identified through maintenance and inspections. We can extend the life of any asset. However, from a prioritisation point of view, this has been given one of the highest priorities. In terms of $275,000 for a new footpath, is a different discussion around creating new assets versus renewal. Council has been working very closely with the CRGs in identifying missing links in footpaths that council could contribute in future budgets around the extending our current network. That's a separate conversation to our obligation to keep our current footpaths in a condition that's safe and usable.
But we have many communities that have unsafe footpaths, don't we?
Through the Chair, yes, we do. They, however, aren't eligible for this round of funding. So the benefit of this funding is that we get an extra $275,000. The council contribution of the if we were to do this length of footpath with council funding, it would cost us the $550,000. The benefit of applying for this funding is we have an option once we run through a budget process, is we either use that $275,000 of our contribution to another type of asset or an existing footpath. So through the budgetary process and prioritisation of each asset class, that would be a decision that would come back here through our budget process.
Thanks, Jason, Councillor Daniels.
Thank you. Jason, do you ever do any sort of estimates on usage, like of footpaths, like to justify the upgrades?
Through the chair, no, we don't have any current data on usage, so we don't have any pedestrian counts. We do have traffic counts, which we, under our asset management plans, we do traffic counts. We currently haven't extended that to pedestrian counts on our footpaths.
But it would be the main thoroughfare for one or two main thoroughfares from the south for students coming from, say, the south to the northern schools and any other commuters. There would be that path.
Yeah, through the chair.
Is that right?
And that is, I guess, one of the criteria that it would have met to be included in part of the Principal Cycle Network plan in 2014 was that it was of that highest ranking category, and in that category it also ranked in one of the priority A, which is the highest priority of those cycle networks as well.
Yeah, okay. No problem. Just a note, if we're doing something like a high-profile footpath like that, it'd be wonderful to showcase crushed glass in that as a recycled product. So, thank you.
Well done. Well done. No, I think there was a reference yesterday that said that, certainly one of their recommendations was, more use of, obviously, that the glass in certainly our concrete products, that's for sure. So, Councillor Moriarty, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I'm very pleased to say today that we actually adopted the Open Space and Rec Plan, which finally has a strategy, I guess, as part of that is our active transport network. So I think between some of our communities where we have been looking at our active transport networks, we can actually marry these up. The main thing for me, particularly for this project, is that exactly what Councillor Daniels mentioned, that for the population, a large population, there's only really that two ways we can get across the river, by foot or bicycle. And what is missing, particularly on the Vince Lester Bridge, which we all know is an issue, that we do not have any pedestrian crossings there. And I think that this project would link well with the pedestrian bridge. While it's not an evidence-based assessment, I guess, but I do see a lot of people using that area as well. So I just, I just think it's an important avenue to improve safety and encourage people to use appropriate active transport networks, given that we've only got a couple, basically.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Moriarty. Well, councillors, look, I think I would be very remiss not to accord the fact that we've raised a number of important issues here, Jason. So whilst you have a resolution in front of you, you've captured a lot of other concerns about other footpaths that don't necessarily qualify, but the importance of them. And obviously councillors really wanting to see the plans reflected in our budgetary, I suppose, consideration. So I think that is starting to happen there. Clearly in this instance, this is an opportunity that presents itself through qualification, I guess you'd say. So it's one of those occasions where we do get to achieve a significant distance if we're prepared to consider that in our budget. So, Councillor, the recommendation is there is that sorry.
Just one quick question. Do all new footpaths have to be built to that specification, the 3 metres now, or is it just the ones on the thoroughfares?
Yeah, so through the chair, council, our own assets, or generally in terms of our assets, we work to the Capricorn Municipal Design Guidelines, which is a 2.5 metre footpath. The grant criteria for this is a 3 metre wide footpath because it's a cycleway, joint cycleway and pedestrian use.
Okay.
And I think we do have footpaths in the township, Jason, ranged from 1.2 to 1.6 to 1.82 there, so there's a whole range, isn't there?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. All right. Councillors, the recommendation is there. So obviously, the project name is the River to Campbellford Drive Cycle Connection, and words are important here. The application amount is in there, and that if the application is successful, council will commit to the inclusion of 275 in the 2022-23 budget as council's contribution to the project. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, seconded by Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Sorry. Those against? So we're all for? Unanimous? Yep. Okay. My apologies. I just. No. I might have been paying attention for a. I was just paying attention for a minute, so I was not used to that. Thank you, everyone. Councillors, just so you know, with your agenda today, there is a late agenda item in which usually traditionally is in part of the usual format. There was a couple of little tweaks that needed to happen there, so through process it comes to you as late agenda item. We'll deal with the finance report after this next report that comes via the CEO's office, and then that'll be the next report we deal with. Okay. See you, Kev. Thank you. LawMac attendance meeting. This comes in the very first report that sits under the hand of our CEO, Sharon Houlihan. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor and Councillors, this item relates to Councillor Daniels' request to attend upcoming 2 meetings of the Local Authority Waste Management Advisory Committee, 2 meetings that are going to be in our regional area. So, as councillors are aware, it's normal practice when a council is to attend a conference or similar to bring that to council for endorsement. So the Local Authority Waste Management Advisory Committee, as you can see in the report, is an organisation of 30 North Queensland local government councils, and it's the 2 upcoming meetings in February and May 2022 to be held in Isaac and Livingston councils that Councillor Daniels is seeking to attend.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? Charlie, have you attended some of these before, Councillor Brimblecombe? Yeah. Okay. No, I just thought that is the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Councillors, the recommendation is there that we endorse Councillor Megan to go. Question? Sorry, Councillor Dan.
I was going to say, it's not limited to me going. Like, if other people want to attend, I'm sure, like, you could. But it's not like, like the council is a membership of LawMac. So if there are other people interested in waste. And I was just interested in attending these because they're in drivable distance. I'm not going to be going to North Queensland or anything like that too. But anyway, that's what I was just wanting to make sure that people other councils understood there was a.
No, thank you for that clarification.
If the car's driving there, there's 4 other seats in there. Thanks.
No, that's wrong, Joe. Councillor Burns?
Look, I think it might be a waste of time, but...
Councillor Burns.
No, I support this. I think it's nearby, so it's a good opportunity.
Councillor Rolfe. Was Councillor Rolfe on there, or Councillor Brimblecombe? Sorry.
Yeah, just anyone interested in going, it is a good forum to attend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information, and also the networking is very good. So, but just the presentations that are generally there are very good. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm thinking about the process. Do we want to endorse someone, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Sorry, go, Councillor Rolfe.
I was going to say that the resolution endorse Councillor Daniels and Councillor Brimblecombe or anybody who wants to go. Are there others? Are there other councillors?
Councillor Daniels has asked for endorsement or other councillors that wish to attend.
Yes, so if there's other...
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the important thing is so that the councillors endorse the councillors. That's it. That's the important thing here. So happy with that? Have you got that, Marnie?
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe Councillor Burns too. So that you can see that it's not a waste of time.
You're getting an insight into some of the councillors now, CEO. All right, councillors. And thank you for bringing that to the council, Councillor Daniels. That recommendation is there obviously endorsed. Councillor Daniels and others to attend the Lawmac meeting at Isaacs. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Curtis, seconded Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Councillors carried. Right. Councillors, your late agenda item, which relates to the monthly financial report. This comes under General Manager Margaret Gatt. I'll let her introduce Vicky to us again today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. Before I hand over to Vicky, the disclaimer in the front of the report there around the reason why it was a late agenda coming to you on Friday is, I know we don't like the word timing as a reason for things being different, but this was a genuine timing issue due to this being the only council meeting in December and for us to be able to process the accruals, etc. So that's why the comment is there that it's a slightly abridged monthly finance report, but of course meets all of our legislative requirements in terms of the statement of comprehensive income, financial position, cash flow and capital works, etc. So I'll just hand over to Vicky now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, councillors. Through the Chair, I present the November Finance Report. The purpose of this report is to provide a monthly update on Council's overall financial position in accordance with the local government regulation. It provides a snapshot of Council's financial position and performance to budget for the period ending 30 November 2021. The key focus of the report is to detail variances to budget and highlight additional information of interest to Council. The report is divided into 6 key components, being the 3 financial statements, an analysis of the capital works program, business unit results, and a summary of procurement activities, including the local buy information. Due to the timing of Council's meeting this month, an abridged version of the finance report is provided to meet legislative requirements. Additionally, the budget figures now reflect the position at BR1, which was approved in November 2021. The Statement of Comprehensive Income provided at Attachment 1 details income and expenses reported during the period. The November result is an operating deficit of 3.9 million, reported against a budgeted deficit of just over 1 million, an unfavourable variance of 2.9 million. The year-to-date net result, including capital, is a surplus of 3.3 million against a budgeted surplus of 3.1 million, a favourable variance of 210,000. Key variances are due to the following. Lower revenue of approximately 2.6 million due to the timing of works under the Roads Maintenance Performance Contract programs. Higher materials and services for water utilities of 878,000. Higher employee costs for infrastructure of 632,000 due to the timing of operational works. This is offset by additional revenues for scrap metal recovery, curbside recyclables and refuse disposal fees, and financial assistance grants received earlier than budgeted. The capital program is actual expenditure to 30 November is 14.4 million against a full year budget of 61.5 million, representing a year-to-date spend of 23.44%. This is approximately 3.6 million below the budgeted cash flow for this period. When commitments are included, the year-to-date spend increases to 62%. Also presented are the operating and income expenses for the 4 business units. The airport has recorded an actual operating surplus of 573,000 against a budgeted surplus of 699,000, an unfavourable variance of 126,000. This is mostly due to the write-off of expenses relating to the airport, the Air Hub concept design in 2017-18 and 18-19, and is offset by additional revenue for car park fees. The sale yards unit has recorded an actual operating surplus of 109,000 against a budgeted surplus of 124,000 due to higher than expected expenses in overtime, merchandise and contractors. The waste unit has recorded an actual operating surplus of 795,000 against a budgeted surplus of 589,000 due to additional revenue from refuse disposal and waste levy fees. The water unit has recorded an actual operating surplus of 836,000 against a budgeted surplus of 1.2 million due to additional materials and services expenditure. Local buy statistics are also included, which show a year-to-date local spend of $23.9 million, representing a 40% local spend. Council's cash position at 30 November is approximately $84 million, with trade and other receivables at $32.8 million. That concludes the presentation of the November finance report. Happy to take any questions relating to the information provided. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Councillors, you heard Margaret obviously provide an explanation of needing to get this together because this is our only meeting for the remainder of this calendar year before we get into January. So, councillors, questions on that information? Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one question really is clarification, just to make sure I am getting this right. That the airport and the sale yards are council's only two commercial units, so with waste business unit and water utilities business unit, that they're just part of departments, aren't they? I'm just checking the wording, sorry. Thank you very much.
Do you want to clarify that a little bit?
Perhaps to give through the chair, some clarification, Councillor Moriarty. Under the national competition policy, I suppose it's more an internal term that we use. Water and sewage and the waste businesses are a type of commercial business and therefore have some differing countering treatment than the communities department, as an example. The airport and the sale yards, again, are different type businesses under national competition policy, and in the budget adoption that national competition policy is adopted, so you would see in there the different types of businesses. It's more an internal term that we use in regards to commercial business units.
Yeah, and thank you very much for that. Yeah, obviously under the Local Government Act we have to report on the separate to commercial, but I just thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? All good. Well, councillors, the recommendation there is the Central Highlands Regional Council adopt that monthly financial report. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brimacombe, second by Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, just a slight change to our agenda today, and I thank the planning department for their flexibility here and indulgence to wait till the end of the meeting with this. So I'll move on to the information reports, which is minutes of the CHACAC, or the Central Highlands Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee minutes. John, team is here, Kat and Suzanne are here. I'll let John introduce this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning slightly to councillors again. Through the chair, the Central Highlands Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee, known as CHACAC, is a council committee established to encourage the participation and optimum delivery for council communities regarding the areas of arts, cultural and heritage programs, projects and activities. I'll now pass over to our Coordinator Arts and Engagement, Kat Hatsey, to present the report. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, General Manager McDougall. Through the Chair, this report presents the CHACAC meeting minutes for the meeting held on the 19th of November 2021 at Council's Emerald Office. So key items for noting are a number of Regional Arts Development Fund projects have been completed with outcome reports being submitted to the committee. With some of those projects having funds returned, that increases our available funds for RADF to $56,584.15. Scanning of heritage collection items is ongoing through the libraries with the Bookeye scanner. Items are already available through Montage, including newspapers, photographs and books. And great progress has been made in the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal grant that with Dr Melanie Piddock visiting Rubyvale and Boguntungan, with thanks to the historical groups in those areas, and of course to Councillor Sypher for her great work in securing that grant and progressing that project. And we'll throw over to councillors for any questions.
Questions, Councillor? Oh, Councillor Sypher. Yep.
Thank you. I'd just like to, the minutes are fantastic and there's certainly not, I think they're a great explanation of that meeting, but I just wanted to talk briefly about our Communities Matter project, which is a community-based project that community got funding for. We've completed Boguntungan and the Gemfields, and we're scheduling Jaringa for February. And I've attended the working bees at both the communities that are done, and the enthusiasm and passion for heritage in these communities is incredible. In March, we'll be looking at further community funding to continue the process of looking at better practices within our heritage groups. And I think what's commendable is that I'm a great one to say that council doesn't have to do everything, and it doesn't. And this has been driven by the community groups. And I think that's really great. But I also believe that as a council, we need to actually consider where we want to position ourselves in the world of heritage. Currently, we have our toe in the pool, and as a collective group of councillors and council, we need to think seriously about, is that all we want to do with our heritage? Or do we actually want to put our whole foot in the pool and actually have a strategy that identifies where we're going in the future with heritage? Maybe we may decide that we don't want to do that. But I think it's important to remember that heritage is our inheritance. And I think, for me personally, we do have a responsibility. So with your indulgence, Mr Mayor, in general business, I'd like to table an action, future action for a workshop to talk about where we want to position ourselves with the heritage and progress with a workshop with the long-term intent of having a strategy that will need to be resourced sufficiently, which would indicate a standalone heritage officer. I'm not proposing this for the immediate future, but I'd like to at least see a strategy within the next 18 months that could possibly have some recommendations and future resourcing for our inheritance, because I think it is absolutely essential before all our old folk die that we record the stories. So in general business, if I may have your indulgence in that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Cyber. And I think it's just a case of, if we can just get that general direction there rather than be a discussion point, we'll refer it to a proper report that can come back to council. If you can do that, that'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other, other questions? Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Cypher there. It's about identifying our stories, what artefacts we have. That's going to be a huge, not issue, but a huge thing in itself, really, about, what are we keeping and restoring and keeping for the history. But it's not just about culture and heritage. It's about reifying our identity of who we are and where we're headed, but capturing the history. I just would like to ask one question, though. On page 426 of the agenda, or page 5 of the minutes, the excellent minutes, which are terrific, because we get to actually feel like we're part of the meeting, reading the minutes. I just noted there under the heading budget update, revised about available funds. You just touched a little bit on this before, for the remainder of the program, being the $56,500 basically, available for round 2 is the 46,000. So, and then commit to reserve $10,000 for round 3. So, so basically, there's not really a, I guess, for each round, there's not like a set amount of money for each round. It's just sort of what if you use it all in the first couple of rounds, that's it, or that's what the strategy is here, that you are earmarking some so that there is something left for the end, and also like making sure, I suppose, the projects are going to be able to be delivered in the time frame as well. Is that?
Through the chair. So it had been flagged in previously with the committee that the model that had been used in for the program was that it was just a pool, and we would pull from that pool each round until the pool was exhausted. Then it was, I guess, identified and discussed by the committee that it could potentially disadvantage people who had perhaps thought, okay, well, I'll apply in round 2 or round 3 over the year of the program, knowing what the dates were, and then that allocation being exhausted before they even had the chance to apply. So the committee at that stage agreed to keep $10,000 for each of round 2 and round 3, with the remainder amount being available in round 1. It happened that we didn't allocate that full amount, well, we didn't reach the cap of what we had agreed to allocate during that round 1, so that obviously then rolls over into round 2, with the 10,000 to be held for round 3, but yeah, up to that remaining amount to be available in that second round, just to allow people for there to be something there if people are wanting to apply in that last round, or you know, perhaps there might be things that are happening further in the future that they don't have details for, they're not ready to be able to make that application. Otherwise, it could potentially disadvantage people significantly if they're having to wait for round 1 in the next year, or the next financial year, which may not happen until August or much later. So that's kind of how it's been structured at the moment.
Good, makes it fair. Yeah, thank you.
Go.
Right, thanks, Kat. Thank you, Councillor Moriarty, for that question. And I think councillors will deal with Councillor Cypher's proposal in general business. All right, councillors, that recommendation is there, that we receive the minutes of the Central Highlands Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee planning meeting. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Burns, second by Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Councillor, I think we move along to 14.3.1, which is the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes, sorry.
General
Manager
Yep,
Michelle,
thank you.
yes.
Thank you. Councillors, report before you today is the minutes of the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee meeting, minutes of the meeting that were held on the 15th of November. It was nice to note actually a number of our stakeholders actually attended that meeting in regards to general aviation, community business representatives as well, and fairly short meeting in regards to the minutes, but again, one of the outstanding actions was some discussion which we're having with the Manager of Customer Service and Communications in regards to getting more information on Council's website in regards to the airport's fees and charges, particularly in regards to landing fees associated. There are also some comments made by the Manager of Airport in regards to his discussions with Central, the Development Corporation in regards to trying to get some data around to inform some of the route development work that we'll be doing, and kicking off a bit of a test host process with Kestrel Coal in regards to that first phase of data gathering. Usual financial highlights, which had indicated that the airport was tracking slightly above its forecast surplus for the period as well. There was also a presentation from the Development Corporation's Tourism Officer Paul Thompson, which was welcomed by the members. There was previously an invitation that was extended to our rental car companies to participate in the meeting. Unfortunately, they declined that, and that we're endeavouring to have a conversation in regards to perhaps some packages that could be developed in regards to tourism packages that could be developed in regards to the rental car. I suppose their stock is very much taken up by the mining needs and those types of needs at this point in time to progress with those types of conversations, but we'll endeavour to keep having those conversations. Manager of Airport did his usual update in regards to operational matters at the airport and the additional business continuity plans we're exploring with potentially the borders opening up come the 17th of, or earlier, 13th of December, and the requirements that need to get put in at the airport. An update in regards to capital works projects, and that led to actually some interesting conversation coming from our stakeholders, particularly in regards to where we're building hard stand areas for car parking, overflow of the rental car parks, etc. Ensuring that there are electrical charging stations for the future. So that was a good conversation. And also in regards to thoughts in regards to Air Park while we're undertaking these capital works in regards to our planning for infrastructure for the facility. So I might leave it there, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure if any of the councillors who are in attendance might like to add anything further.
Councillors? Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two comments, really. Having a look at your minutes and looking what you actually covered in that meeting, you did very well to stick to your 2 hours, starting at 9:07 and finishing at 11:06. That's very efficient. Look, I just wanted to make a comment that I was really glad to read in the minutes on page 5 of the minutes, item 7, strategic overview, that the committee considered the possible impact that the latest net zero targets may have on the airport and the community. It's very poignant, I think, at a time where council, as Councillor Daniels mentioned this morning, about council looking at their draft net zero planning as well, and I had not even thought about the airport being part of that as well. So, and I'm not sure if it is, but anyway, I just wanted to note that I was pleased to see that there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Moriarty. I think that I'll wait for the other report. I guess in the council's the airport's inclusion in that net zero discussion or the operational parts of it, clearly there would be no future development. And it always is an interesting conversation when you're talking about airports because they don't generally get a good rap in the, I guess you'd say, in the discussion about greenhouse gas emissions. But the reality is there's lots of things you can do with lots of inert parts of everything that contribute to a better result, and offsets certainly are always part of transition. So anything we do in the future, and I hope that's incorporated in our corporate plan, will be about those considerations. And I mean, all of this adds up to a greater awareness. So, councillors, anything else about those minutes? I have to say it was a great meeting. There was a lot of work gotten through, and really the benefit of those independent advisory group members is terrific. They're really starting to feel like they're hitting their feet now and ownership of it. So I think that benefits us all, and certainly a great community input to it. So,
if I may add, Mr Mayor, just to indicate that the Manager of Airport is IMing me, that they have commenced their net zero plans for the airport, commence work in regards to that, and councils will be aware part of our future planning is some solar is part of the infrastructure for the airport as well.
So let's not be talking about Solomon because he's watching. So, yeah, all right. Thank you very much, General Manager. Councillors, that recommendation is there. We received those minutes. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Daniel, seconded by Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Councillors, that brings us to a report under the CEO. This relates to the letter I spoke to about this morning, the Central Queensland Regional Council's letter of concern to the Premier. So I'll leave that to you to introduce, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor and councillors, this is an information report to let you know that Central Highlands Regional Council has sent a letter to the Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils, of which Central Highlands Council is a member, has sent a letter to the Premier of the state regarding concerns about impacts of the upcoming vaccination, the exclusion of unvaccinated people from certain venues. So that letter was discussed and tabled at the last meeting of the Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils, which was on the 19th of November. So the crux of the letter that's gone from the organisation of councils is referring to concerns of all the councils about what the planned exclusion and the rules coming in. The letter does state, and to be clear, that local community leaders, and as local community leaders, we do strongly support the need for increased vaccination rate to help protect our community, and that it's an important public health measure. So that's acknowledged, and that relates to when the borders are going to open, which has come forward, although the vaccination rules are not coming forward, we understand. And we also understand as a group of councils that there is a need to introduce incentives to protect the communities, of which vaccination is one. But there is concern, though, that our regional communities and businesses are struggling through tough economic conditions and have been doing for some time, and that's acknowledged in that letter as well. And then the letter calls for the Premier's support and consideration of some alternative measures, or at least a staged approach for Central Queensland regional businesses and venues, and that's to help them navigate the new rules. So there's concerns around some timing, being right before Christmas, and some other concerns outlined, and that one of the alternative measures or stage timing that's been asked for in this letter is a 6-week relaxation for these for residents who to be considered for residents who've received their first dose and booked in for their second dose, which would give them till the end of January before they would be excluded from venues. So we've put those measures as a group of councils to the Premier. There has been no response to that as yet, but the information report is for councillors just to understand that that letter has gone from the Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils.
Thanks, Sharon. And I guess I can provide, I suppose, our input in terms of being part of that meeting, and that was certainly the writer, Neb Ferrier, who was our chair, certainly perhaps expressed, certainly concerns and probably a little parochial in terms of probably more about the banana shy than perhaps some of the others in terms of unemployment and things like that. But the point is practically that as proposed at that stage, those measures were going to be an impact on businesses. I think it needs to be made quite clear. We have referenced this letter, and it is, as I said earlier this morning, from the perspective of the mayors that actually created and drafted and agreed to it, was about the collective strength of providing this feedback to the Premier. And clearly within the letter, and it's not a letter that I guess everyone sees, and this is the reason why we're tabling it today, is that we clearly ask for, within the jurisdictional responsibility that we have, consideration of certainly a more appropriate lead-in time to this. We understand small business probably as well as everyone. Central Highlands certainly has a development corporation and others that work very, very closely with their businesses. We are all aware anecdotally of the issues that some of those businesses will face. And in the ensuing days since this letter's been written, just people now, since the mandate has been extended to school teachers and others and other groups. We now know the difficulties that principals and school management boards are having now with actually having to talk through employees that aren't vaccinated and are going to have to be and don't want to be. And they're the sorts of things, I guess, are probably unofficially referred to in these things but can't specifically be stated, otherwise the letter would be 10 pages long. What we did request was consideration of how you might better manage that and or measures that might help businesses adapt. And there are lots of exemptions, I guess you'd say, that perhaps a lot of people aren't aware of as well in terms of information that's available. And I'm not making that excuse for the mandate that's been provided. But things that our councils talked about was, for instance, having a New Year's Eve party, even externally, with a group of 2,000 or 3,000 people at a beach. The rules would state that there would have to be an unvaccinated area defined by a rope from people that are vaccinated, which I think is probably offensive to most people and quite optically just would not practically work. So they're the sorts of things that we realise just haven't been thought through. That was the reason that I think, and without compromising my fellow mayors and risk speaking on behalf of them, those were the sorts of concerns we wanted to sort of highlight. I think subsequently, and our letter was tabled in the, or was, I guess, rolled out through the Courier Mail. So I guess in terms of was it newsworthy? Yes, it was. I think we probably had a bit of criticism, I guess, in some way, shape or form for perhaps being a little bit supportive of this, but the reality is mayors in Central Queensland are a pretty pragmatic bunch of people. At the end of the day, they have a tremendous respect for the communities they serve and the rights of those people to choose if they want to be vaccinated or unvaccinated. I only say this because at the heart of this mandate, that's where this goes to. So having respect for that, the only jurisdiction we have is then to provide the assistance and support that as a local government we can. And I've said in responses to people in our community that we will be treated like everyone else, and we are. But we, as a local government, can take it a step further in terms of our advocacy. We have asked for those things to be improved, for clarification and some better guidelines to business. But at the very, very realistic, I suppose, acknowledgement that at the end of the day, by definition, a mandate from the state is from the state. We have no jurisdiction. We can pass resolution on resolution here about what we do and don't support. However, it has absolutely no bearing and no truck at all with government whatsoever. So, in effect, and I took the time and the liberty to look at resolutions from Livingston Shire Council and Banana Shire Council and others, and if you read those, they're just a reiteration of the basic rights that people have and a reference to improving the lot for their businesses, and that's clearly what we're trying to do. I think it's appropriate that, having responded to a number of people in the community, just to say is that I don't ever want to be thinking that because it's an answer that you don't like, that it's not support from this council that you will get. But clearly, we will work within the guidelines of the mandate. That is something we have no, absolutely zero ability to change. But what we can do is probably make the best of, or make it get the best conditions and the best support we can to businesses. And the state government has responded in terms of some availability of funding, and I know whether you like it or not, things like improved signage, management sort of guidelines, and I guess these for some people are quite problematic. But at the end of the day, there are some adjustments we made. We've watched a lot of people adjust their businesses in after February 2020 with great difficulty, and they will have to perhaps do that again. But we will be here to support them as best we can. But we want people to realise that it won't be a case of our stance or our position or our pros or our not pros. We will be here as a supportive council to do what we can possibly do. The mandate that the state government provides comes under their right to do so, and I think most pragmatic people would know, if you have 85 to 90% of the population vaccinated, that's the basis upon which they will make their decisions, whether we like that or not. So that's that's where that sits. So we have been very careful not to be leaping out to show a lack of support or more support. What we're saying quite clearly is we think it's a problem, the way that they originally set out the guidelines for business. We're seeking to change that, and the language we've used has obviously been measured around that, because CQ councils probably have a bit of a reputation of being areas where there are low vaccination rates. And obviously we're trying to, as all of the mayors and leaders have said, we're obviously encouraging people to get vaccinated, but we're very respectful of people's decision not to be. So that's as much as I can say and should say today, but I wanted to share this with council so to make sure that it is tabled so you understand exactly the position that those local councils took. So if there's any questions or...
Just a quick comment, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. I just wanted to say that, as you rightly said this morning and now, that that the CQ ROC provides an opportunity for councils to raise any concerns collectively. It's very limited individually, but I just wanted to say that it did. Thank you very much for sharing the letter, and also that this letter does give the opportunity through that forum to exactly to raise our concerns, grave concerns about the economic and social impact. So just wanted to say thank you. At least it gives some opportunity to raise, give a voice, I guess, to our region.
Look, and you all know that, and you've been approached, and this is one of those times as community representatives that you sometimes get a little bit torn between good friends and people that have an opinion, and when we get drawn into that, and you know, let's face it, that's what we've signed on from here. But we have a pretty clear job to do ourselves, and we've just got to do that. Sometimes it's not the answer everyone wants, but what we will do is we'll make sure we'll be as supportive as we can. Central Highlands Development Corporation, Arjun and Mary Ryan and that team, they're really conscious. If people need something, there might be things and measures that, you know, that Arjun might recommend to us when we see perhaps the impact of these things, but things like the exemptions and certainly work practices we can, I guess, adapt to. That's what we'll try and do, but that will be our work, you know, in the next month and a half. I think it'll be the proof will be in how some of this rolls out. All right, councillors, well, that's just for noting. So the recommendation is you just received that. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Carried. Sorry, you're against. Okay. Holy. Thanks, Nat. Councillors, I think that gets us to the end of our agenda. We've got... sorry, the open agenda. We have a closed agenda item. So, unfortunately, gallery, that will be, we'll need to close the room. So, all of those officers aren't required for this next report, and our gallery will have to be cleared for that, and we'll reopen the meeting. So, will someone move that we go into closed session? Councillor Daniels, Councillor Burns, all in favour? Thank you. Sorry, mate, you're right there now? Right, councillors, we're back into open session now, so welcome back our live streamers. Councillors, the discussion regarding the floodplain amendment has been had there. The recommendation is that we note the progress of the revised draft planning scheme amendment, planning scheme major floodplain management, and the second part of that is to authorise the CEO to do all those matters specified in Chapter 2, Part 4, and has been clarified there by Kate in respect of the statutory guidelines and the rules for making a major amendment and amending a planning scheme policy. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Right, councillors, that then brings us to general business, and Councillor Cypher has flagged that she would like to, I guess, talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you. So following on from my previous discussion regarding a strategy, a heritage strategy, I'd like to propose that we have a workshop, and I'm assuming, Kerry, it'd be a workshop to start with, a workshop where the staff could bring forward a scope of works that would go towards developing that strategy. And what else do I need? Perhaps the GM might be able to help me.
Chair, because the other bit, just to, it'd be remiss of me, like we're going through a planning scheme, some aspects there as well, councillors. So
yes,
I'm just wondering, Kirsten's just quickly walked back in, and it might be worthwhile that we just tie a few things into that workshop if you just give me the liberty to maybe work out what this from a workshop perspective, and if I can send that to you as a councillor group to say this is what we're thinking that we would like to workshop, and then you can come back to me and say yes or no, or we would like this added, or whatever it may be. But if we can just be maybe quite open with our action to say that we'll hold a workshop regarding you know, the future of heritage matters, that will just give me the liberty to then come back to you.
And look, within the next 6 months, I know there's a lot of work on. I just want to flag it so that it's documented somewhere, that it doesn't fall off the radar, that it does. I'm not trying to add pressure. I'm just trying to identify it.
So there you go. So that doesn't have to be a resolution. It's just a request to come back and obviously provide, start up the machinations. Councillor, General Manager Michelle.
That's twice today.
That's
I call the councillor, but anyway, all good. Just wish to clarify, please, Councillor Cypher, in regards to...
grade, I can tell you, General Manager. Yeah.
In regards to heritage, you envisage we're including Indigenous heritage within that? Thank you.
Heritage.
All right. Other general business? Oh, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think another thing, I think, just to be recording as well, is that especially when reading the open space and rec plan, particularly some of the assessments for the demographics and our future trends of growth, but more so decline, it made me realise that it would be so good if somehow we had an opportunity or something where we have the demographic data in-house. We just seem to be, every time there's a report done, there seems to be, the consultants have to go and gather all of that data every time. And I was just wondering if there's some way that we can consolidate that where, and perhaps there is somewhere, and it's always interesting what each lot of consultants also capture and present. But it would be excellent if we had a really good, I suppose, social profile of our region and our communities anyway, I won't go on there, but I would just like to see that happen. But I'd also like to see that happen because particularly they were talking about what community is going to grow until 2041. I know that they're using the 2016 census as a basis, and we've got a new census coming out soon. But and those communities that are declining. So that just brings me back to the fact that I think that we are in a good space. Everyone was saying we need to wait for the new CEO to arrive to do the corporate plan. We also need to wait for the new CEO to arrive to do our long-term community planning. So I would just like to have it flagged that we also start to consider that level of planning at our long-term community vision for our region and our communities, that actually be part of what we start to do next year as well as part of that. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moriarty.
Mr Mayor, just quickly, I think so CHDC will have some of that, surely.
Yeah, they do. They do an economic profile, and there is an overlap of some of that data, but we need to be looking at what is it that we need to know about our communities and about our region that's more on that community social side. Thanks, John. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, councillors. Any other general business? You right there, Councillor Cypher, you haven't had the engine fallen out of... Oh, right, okay. No, thank you.
We're at the end of the meeting, so I don't have to reach out.
Okay. Well, I hope you're talking about your iPad there.
Yes.
All right, councillors, I think that's about all we have, except, councillors, I know in the excitement of having Sharon in the room and obviously being able to have her family in the community, and she's been to lots of things. Through that process, we lose our acting CEO, has acted in this role since July, Michael Parker. It was even interesting last night, testimonials to Michael at various places he's been, and rightly so, and from greater people than me. But the reality is, even at Capella last night, the people in that room were very, very profoundly sort of, I guess you'd say, felt that we were in safe hands because Michael Parker had certainly sat in this role here to allow us the transition, you know, certainly from Scott Mason's resignation through to Sharon arriving here. And it's almost impossible for me to say what sort of influence he has been. He has provided certainly, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, a very grandfatherly profile in our organisation, in that I guess the right you earn and the reputation you gain by being a dedicated and determined person for such a long period of time, you earn that right of respect, and I know that staff members from GMs down have always felt very comfortable with approaching Michael with a problem or seeking some advice, and he's always provided that, some in a very pragmatic way at times, and then obviously applied the right amount of sensitivity to most of those things, which clearly, without referring to there being an interim period of time, we don't get the luxury of taking time off. Everyone has to keep doing their job, and obviously we had the very great benefit of Michael's experience and the fact that I think it'd be pretty clear, and he would say to himself, that he loves this place. Certainly the broader Central Queensland area has always been fundamentally his home, and we have the benefit of certainly seeing him act like that, and we've had that benefit. What it also did for us as a council and as decision makers is to have just that same wise decision making capability that he has to back us up and to allow us that really comfortable process of identifying the right candidate for us for our council. And So in a way, Sharon, your appointment here is almost inextricably linked to the fact that Michael afforded us that opportunity and luxury of being able to consider things well, and I think we feel very comfortable with that. So, Michael, we owe you a lot, which we'll never be able to probably repay you. A Red Claw shirt and a couple of golf balls and a hat probably doesn't cover it, I'm terribly respectful of that. But thank you very much for all you've done for us, and I'm sure, with the greatest respect, it may not be totally over in terms of our relationship because you've now got the keys of the city. But the reality is, we know that you won't be a stranger, and we're very, very grateful for the time you spent with us. And Marnie will suitably make sure that you go on another honour board other than at C-grade golf, that you'll actually be recalled here for your service to our community. Michael, much appreciated.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. And he's not going to respond. I think he's...
I do appreciate the sentiments expressed, Mr Mayor. It's, I have enjoyed my time. It's been more satisfying than against, that's for sure. And I welcome the support of the council that's been given freely, and the staff also. That's been most welcome and certainly helps. It helps the tenure and made the job enjoyable. So I do appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you very much, Michael. Well, folks, we are going to have our lunch now, so on that...
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, sorry. Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to make it a point that I actually made 2 points up there before. Sorry, Marnie. The other one was for the council or Central Highlands Regional Council to consider long-term community plan, community visioning initiative for next year. It's been in our operational plans as well. So,
Thank you, Councillor Moria. There being no further business, I'll declare the meeting closed at 12:53. Thank you, everyone, and Merry Christmas.
We got the secret Santa coming.
It is at lunchtime? Absolutely.
And I've got the rumble balls.